Chapter 988. The man's sudden kiss was so strong that she couldn't bear it. Her body staggered back uncontrollably, but the man's arm held her tightly in his arms, locking her in his arms. The overwhelming kiss made her instantly lose the strength to resist. Even her instinctive struggle and retreat turned into a feeling of numbness all over her body. Her nerves trembled with the sudden intense and somewhat excessive kiss. Feng Ling could clearly feel that the man was not in a good mood. She could also feel his anger. She closed her eyes and allowed him to kiss her passionately. Even when the man's hand tightened around her waist, as though he was about to break her waist, she did not make any sound or struggle. It wasn't until she was really out of breath that he finally let go of her. However, he only gave her a second to breathe before he kissed her again. He ignored the pedestrians and cars passing by in the apartment, ignored the embarrassed gazes and fingers of the passers-by, and kissed as if there was only him and her in this world. Feng Ling's entire body turned soft as she leaned against his chest. She felt as though all the air in her lungs was about to be sucked dry, and she could not muster up any strength. The man suddenly let go of her. Just when she thought that it was finally over, and they could finally talk properly, the man expressionlessly grabbed her hand and turned to walk into the apartment. "Boss!" Feng Ling's heart suddenly pounded. She didn't understand what he was going to do, but she vaguely understood what he wanted to do. She hesitated for a moment, but was still forcibly dragged into the door of the apartment building by the man. The man brought her all the way into the elevator, and then all the way into the apartment. When the door opened, Feng Ling stumbled and was dragged in by the man. As the door closed with a pung sound, she felt her body being thrown uncontrollably onto the sofa closest to the door, in the middle of the living room. Feng Ling's foot tripped over a railing by the coffee table. Wen Yi, who could barely stand, suddenly fell back. The moment she fell heavily on the sofa, the man pressed down on her. When she subconsciously shrank her neck and tried to turn her face away, he pressed her against the sofa, pulled her face with one hand, and kissed her fiercely again. The kiss in the apartment was completely different from the kiss outside. One with anger and emotion, the other with obvious lust. Feng Ling's hands hammered Li Nanheng's body twice, and were firmly pressed by his sides. The man's kiss was domineering and turbulent. Without any hesitation, he turned to attack her sensitive parts. She shrunk her neck and wanted to hide, but she couldn't help but tremble because of the kiss and the surging feeling. Boss, wake up. I know you're angry." She tried to make him regain his senses. However, the man directly held her chin and sealed her mouth again. He kissed her deeply for a long time, and just as Feng Ling was about to lose control of his kiss, he suddenly reached out and lifted her up from the sofa. Her body and feet were suspended in the air, making people instinctively want to hug the person in front of them. Feng Ling was no exception. She hugged the man's neck and lowered her head to see the things in the man's eyes that she couldn't resist. The man carried her into the bedroom, kicked the door shut, and pressed her into the bed. Following that, whether it was taking off her clothes or his own, his movements were so smooth that Feng Ling had no room to push him away. The man kissed her passionately. All of a sudden, the sound of the man unbuckling his belt could be heard in the air. Feng Ling closed her eyes. She had a premonition that the heart-wrenching pain she had experienced that night was coming again. Right now Li Nanheng was not in a coma. He was very awake, and his body was not as weak as it was when he had a high fever. She had a premonition that she might die. However, just as the man was ready to move, he forcefully pressed her hand down and firmly pressed her arm to the side because he kept kissing her. All of a sudden, the sequela left by the snake bite on Feng Ling's arm was the occasional sudden pain and numbness. She was used to this feeling, but being pressed against the bed and unable to move, the pain caused her face to pale. Her body, which had been slightly heated by the man, also turned cold and trembled. Because of her sudden tremble, Li Nanheng immediately stopped moving. Her trembling from being kissed was different from this tremble. It was impossible for Li Nanheng not to feel it. He immediately thought of something, and lowered his head to see her pale face under the dim light of the bedroom. He then turned to look at her stiff arm that was pressed under his palm, and withdrew his hand. As soon as her arm was free, Feng Ling quickly moved her hand back, and then moved it very slowly, trying to make the pain and numbness in her arm disappear. Looking at her painful and careful movements and her forbearing expression, Li Nanheng felt as though someone had splashed a basin of cold water on his head and sobered him up. He abruptly got up, and at the same time, pulled the quilt over to cover the girl, who was almost unclothed by him, and turned to walk out. Feng Ling waited on the bed for the pain in her arm to pass before she sat up with the quilt in her hands. The apartment was very quiet, so quiet that she could hear the sound of water coming from the bathroom after Li Nanheng returned to the bedroom opposite. Needless to say, he went to take a cold shower. She lowered her head to look at her arm, rubbed it with her other hand, and then looked in the direction of the bedroom opposite. After thinking for a while, she got out of bed, tidied up her clothes, and then sat on the bed, not knowing what she should do. 15 minutes later, the sound of water stopped. Not long after, Li Nanheng came out in a dark blue bathrobe, sat on the sofa, lit a cigarette, and smoked for a while. Then from Feng Ling's angle, she saw that the man seemed to be leaning against the sofa and did not move for a long time. Boss Li's mood seemed to be really not right. If it was only because he saw her and Xiao Fei hugging each other earlier, it would be fine if he was jealous. He would not be like this. She got up and walked out. She walked to the sofa and saw that the man had already pressed out the cigarette in the ashtray on the coffee table. He seemed to be resting on the sofa with his eyes closed. Even when he heard her approaching, he did not open his eyes. However, Feng Ling could tell from his breathing and closed eyes that he was not asleep. Chapter 989. She stood by the sofa for a while. Seeing that he was leaning against it, she thought for a moment, and went back to the bedroom to take out a thin blanket and gently covered the man's body. Li Nanheng closed his eyes and did not respond. She sat on the carpet in front of the sofa, looked up at the man who seemed to have something on his mind, and asked, "Boss, are you in a bad mood?" The man did not respond. "Is there something on your mind?" He still did not speak. Feng Ling wondered if he was having a headache because of the alcohol. She was about to get up to see if she should go behind the sofa to massage his head, when the man's voice suddenly rang hoarsely. "Feng Ling, do you like me?" The girl sitting on the ground still had a hickey on her neck from his kiss. Although her clothes were tidied up, it was still a bit messy. She sat on the carpet, hugging her knees. She did not change her position. She just looked at him. The man lowered his head from the sofa and looked at the girl sitting on the carpet. "Answer me." Seeing the coldness and seriousness in his eyes, Feng Ling inexplicably felt that her answer seemed to be very important to him. She couldn't answer carelessly, so he thought for a while and said, "Boss, I don't know much about relationships, but according to the feelings I have for you and other men, I don't feel too repulsed to be with you." Li Nanheng still looked at her expressionlessly. "Don't give me so many reasons. I just want to ask you, do you like it or not?" Feng Ling looked into his eyes and slowly nodded. "I like it." The man's slightly cold gaze was instantly moved. Sitting on the sofa, he threw away the thin blanket on his body, lowered his head, lifted her chin and kissed her lips. This kiss was very gentle, but it also touched the tip of her tongue. When Feng Ling tried to express her feelings and was about to respond, the man suddenly paused because of her response. His eyes, which had just calmed down after a cold shower, darkened again. He released her lips and pressed his forehead against hers, saying hoarsely, "You're not even 18 years old. You're still a child. If you like me, can you wait for me? When you're 20, I'll marry you and make you Mrs. Lian." Feng Ling did not have any thoughts about marriage. In fact, she had never even thought about it. The words Mrs. Li were also unfamiliar to her, but for some reason she yearned for it. So looking at the man's face, she slowly nodded. "And wait for me for 3 years." The man's voice was so hoarse that it was almost inaudible. She nodded obediently. Do you want to go back to the base? Continue to pretend to be a man and live in the base. Live the life you want. At least for these 3 years, if you want to go back to the base, I can help you." The man pressed his lips against hers. "Want to go back?" Feng Ling answered without hesitation, "Yes." Suddenly, the man's hand gently caressed her head. He stepped back and looked at her tenderly. In the next 3 years, you can go back to the base and continue to find your sense of belonging. We'll go back to the sniper team and train like before. As for your gender, only I know. No one else will know, okay? Feng Ling didn't quite understand why he suddenly allowed her to return to the base, and why he suddenly said that she could continue living the life she wanted in the base for the next 3 years. He clearly wanted to hide her outside the base, and didn't want her to go back to the base with those men, right? But of course, it was good to return to the base. And it was even better to return to her original state. She nodded. All right. Seeing her obedient look, Li Nanheng stared at her face. Aren't you going to ask me why? I won't. Boss, everything you've arranged for me is definitely for my own good. Besides, boss, you don't like to explain too much to others. You have your reasons for your decisions. I'm a member of 11 Base, and it's my duty to obey all your orders. I'm also the person you like, so you won't hurt me. I trust you. Feng Ling answered very sincerely. Li Nanheng looked at her for a long while and suddenly smiled. I have one more request. What? After returning to the base, move in from the room next door and live with me. You know, the bed in my room is quite big. Feng Ling. After confirming that Feng Ling's arm was recovering very well, Feng Ling was finally allowed to pack her luggage and return to the base as long as she let the arm that had been bitten by the snake rest as much as possible during daily training, and went to the infirmary to have Dr. Wen give her a massage. Feng Ling was finally allowed to pack her bags and return to the base. It seemed that since she was injured in the military last time, she hadn't officially returned to the base for at least 3 months, and hadn't received training for such a long time. Because of Qiao Fei's departure, the sniper team changed to a new drill master. Li Nanheng was still the main drill master, and the new deputy drill master was surnamed Shen. It was said that he was transferred from the elite team. He was not tall and didn't look as good as Qiao Fei. She didn't need to guess to know why Li Nanheng transferred such a person to be the deputy drill master. He really didn't give her any chance to be distracted. During the training break, Kay sat next to Feng Ling and asked her, Your hair has almost grown past your ears. You didn't have a chance to shave it when you were outside. Although your hair wasn't as flat as ours, it wasn't so long. What's wrong? Your arm still hurts. Is it inconvenient? Do you want to come to my place tonight? I'll shave it for you. Feng Ling was about to speak, when Li Nanheng, who passed by, turned back and said coldly, Shave what? You can't shave it. Feng Ling. Kay turned to look at him with a dumbfounded expression. Boss, I mean, Feng Ling's hair is too long. Long hair. It's not very popular this year. Those who look like the Beatles outside have long hair. But they are no different from other men, right? Li Nanheng argued with a deadpan expression. Kay, is it popular for men to keep their hair a little longer this year? Is it too late for me to grow it a little longer now? Feng Ling. Li Nanheng glanced at him indifferently and said coldly, If you aren't afraid of scaring the girls outside to death, you can keep it. Why, boss, you think Feng Ling's hair is better, but I want to scare people to death if I grow it a little longer. I also have good facial features, okay? Kay was not convinced. Li Nanheng first glanced at Feng Ling's face appreciatively and meaningfully, then glanced at Kay with disdain and turned away. Kay, boss, you're too biased. Be careful, or I'll spread the news that I found you in Feng Ling's room last time. Feng Ling. Chapter 990. After returning to the base, Li Nanheng didn't just occasionally go to Feng Ling's room. He clearly went there often, okay? After the evening training, Feng Ling went back to balance her limbs as usual and showered as usual. After showering, she walked out of the bathroom while drying her hair, and habitually glanced at the door. She was wondering what was wrong with Li Nanheng tonight. Did the sun rise from the west? A few days ago, he wouldn't go back to sleep peacefully unless he took a few bites of her. Why didn't he come tonight? Just as Feng Ling walked to the bed while drying her hair, she suddenly turned to look out of the window, only to see that the window was pulled open by the man from the outside, and he walked in. Feng Ling. She almost forgot that her door was no different from a window. Because the balcony was connected to his balcony, her window was even less hidden. He clearly could come as he pleased. Why didn't you go through the front door today? Feng Ling was startled at first, and then looked at him strangely after calming down. The man smelled the fragrance of the shower gel in her room, and walked over to sit on the chair by her bed, watching her as she had just showered. Because she had already exposed her gender in front of him, and he was the only one who dared to casually come to her room at night, she no longer wrapped her chest cloth after showering. Right now, she was wearing a very loose white t-shirt. Her hair was half wet and hung on her forehead. She casually pulled it down with her hand and combed it down with her fingers. "I know you just showered at this time, so I came to see you." The man had the same routine attitude as a few days ago. He spoke in a dignified manner, but every time after seeing her, he would carry her over and nibble on her. Feng Ling was almost used to it. She fiddled with her hair again and said, "Actually, my hair has indeed grown a lot. It's fine if I don't return to the base, but now that I'm back, I have to continue being a man. The length of my hair doesn't quite meet the base's standards. Your hair is the length specially granted by the base's boss. No one dares to say anything." Feng Ling. "Boss, you're abusing your authority. I've worked hard for 11 base for so many years, and only hit a wife in the base. So what if I don't let my wife shave her hair? What's wrong with that?" He lowered his head and kissed her lips, which still had the refreshing taste of toothpaste. "I didn't say how long you have to keep your hair, nor did I force you to find your femininity, but shaving your head flat is really too exaggerated. You didn't have such short hair in the base before." Feng Ling didn't know what to say. "You don't have to keep your hair long, and I don't want you to find your femininity, but shaving your head flat is really too exaggerated. Did you notice when my hair grew?" Feng Ling was surprised. The man snorted and bit her lips as if punishing her. He pressed her into the bed and nibbled on her mouth, chin, and neck for a long time before finally letting her go. He held her in his arms and pressed her against his chest intimately. He said hoarsely, "I've been paying attention to you since you came in when you were 13. Do you believe me?" Letter. At that time he was suspicious of her. This man had never dispelled his suspicions of her. Other people had been living with her for so many years, but he had left the base for 2 or 3 years, but he still saw through it. Although he didn't say it clearly, and she didn't ask much, he clearly wasn't surprised when she confessed to him in the Snake Valley. "Why did you ask so much? You only need to know that I only have eyes for you, right?" The man lowered his head and kissed the top of her head again. Feng Ling actually wanted to complain, but hearing his straightforward confession, her face heated up. She wanted to get up from his arms, but the man refused to let go. "Don't move. I'll hold you for a while longer." "Boss, you should go back to your room to sleep. Otherwise, you'll have to take a cold shower again tonight." The man immediately snorted. "Do you know how uncomfortable it is for me to endure it every day? So why don't you grow up quickly? I'll give you 3 years. It should be enough for you to grow up." Feng Ling secretly rolled her eyes. He had already eaten her up before she had even grown up. But he didn't remember it. She didn't have anyone to reason with. Feng Ling almost fell asleep in Li Nanheng's arms. The room was so quiet that she really felt sleepy. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Feng Ling opened her eyes abruptly and sat up quickly. Li Nanheng was also about to fall asleep. He was woken up by the sound, and the girl in his arms suddenly struggled out of his arms. He frowned and looked at the door with some irritation. "It's so late. Who knocks on the door?" Li Nanheng asked. Feng Ling didn't know. She had been in the base for so long. Those who were close to her usually knew that her room was not very close at night, especially after she moved next door to Boss Li. Those people were very sensible and never came to disturb her. Who could knock on the door at this time? Unless it was, she turned back and gave Li Nanheng a look, meaning for him to quickly go back to his room through the window. The man lay on the bed and didn't move. He had no intention of hiding in his room. He just raised his cold brows and watched her walk to the door. The door was opened. Immediately, 2 young men around 15 or 16 years old grinned at her. "Master Feng Ling, we just heard that you are here. Did we disturb your rest? Today we have a few things to take note of in the base. When we called you, we found that your phone was turned off, so we came to look for you." Feng Ling looked at the 2 boys outside the door, and the corner of her mouth twitched. In the past few years, the base hadn't recruited many new people. A few days ago, they actually started to recruit new people again. Recently, there were many new members in the base. Most of them were boys in their teens, just like them. On the second day after she came back, the base hall assigned more than 10 new members to the sniper team. 2 of them were assigned to her, so she could occasionally train these 2 new people. And these 2 boys were very sweet, and kept calling her Master Feng Ling. She coughed. It's so late. Are you sure you want to ask me at this time? Did we disturb your rest? We just learned that you are living here, and saw that the light in your room is still on. So we came over. The 2 boys were a little embarrassed. Sorry, we just arrived at the base, and were assigned to such a powerful sniper team. We were a little excited and wanted to talk to you, Master. Chapter 991. Feng Ling could understand this kind of excitement. She was also very excited when she passed the assessment and joined the sniper team. But she was not good at showing that kind of emotion. Looking at the 2 teenagers, Feng Ling smiled kindly. If you're excited, you can go to the training ground and run a few laps. It's not convenient for me now. Let's talk tomorrow. The 2 little boys didn't understand what she meant. Seeing that they couldn't ask, they suddenly said, Then, Master Feng Ling, can we go into your room and sit for a while? I heard that only the most powerful people in the sniper team are qualified to live in this building. And I heard that every room in this building has a large balcony facing the direction of the training ground. It's very good. Feng Ling paused and didn't speak, but the 2 boys in front of the door were stunned a few seconds later. They raised their heads, watched the man who slowly walked out of the room, and suddenly felt a sense of oppression. Feng Ling sensed their gaze and subconsciously turned her head. Li Nanheng had walked behind her. He was still wearing a black uniform and black trousers, with a thin and cold expression. He had one hand in his trouser pocket, and his eyes, and a little cold. The 2 teenagers outside the door were not short. They were still in the puberty stage, and were already more than 175 centimeters tall. But facing Li Nanheng, they were still too short. The gap between them was also very obvious. The 2 boys looked at Boss Li, who actually appeared in Feng Ling's room. This was the Boss Li they had only admired from afar after entering the base. But now he was standing in front of them. Oh no, standing behind their master Feng Ling. At the same time, Boss Li's lips were a bit cold. Don't you know what time it is now? Did you come to 11 base for training or for a vacation? Feng Ling. Only then did she realize why Li Nanheng was always so unapproachable in front of the newcomers. He really had a temper. If you wanted to do anything in front of him, you would first be frozen to death by his eyes. How on earth did she survive under his suspicious and scrutinizing gaze when she first entered the base? Boss Li. The 2 boys were extremely excited under the man's cold gaze. Seeing that the 2 of them were still so excited that they refused to leave, Li Nanheng's cold face gradually became more expressionless. He glanced at them, turned around and walked inside, saying lightly, It's late. Those who should go back should go back. The curfew rules in the base are very strict. If you want to break the rules as soon as you come in, I won't let you stay even if you pass the assessment. Feng Ling turned back to look at his back, and then at the 2 stunned boys outside the door. She gave them a look, and when they returned to their senses, they hurriedly turned to leave. She then closed the door. The room returned to silence. Feng Ling turned back and glared at the man in the room angrily. Why didn't you hide when you saw someone coming? You actually dared to challenge them in front of them, scaring them so much that they would probably be traumatized by you in the future. Are you afraid that they won't find out what's going on between us? Li Nanheng lowered his head and glanced at her. Is there anything between us that can't be discovered? Adultery. Every night, you come over and kiss me. Feng Ling glared at him. Looking at her coquettish expression, Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows. He said lightly, Why do I have to hide? Is that something a man should do? Feng Ling. They had clearly agreed that after returning to the base, she would continue to disguise as a man, and he would help her keep her secret. However, even though this man did not reveal her secret, the possessiveness that he displayed all the time made it obvious that there was something wrong. She glared at him. You just want everyone to find out that I'm a woman, right? My attitude towards you in the past is no different from the way I treat you now. It's because you have me in your heart and are afraid that others will find out that you're so sensitive. Do you think everyone doesn't know that there's something fishy between us? At such a late hour, apart from these few newbies, who would dare to knock on your door? Who would have such a head on their neck for nothing? After so long, who wouldn't be able to tell? Feng Ling. Are you saying that they think you're interested in men? He lowered his eyes to look at her. She did not appear to be much smarter than before after returning to the base. Xiao Su and Han Jin clearly knew about it when they were in Cambodia. As for the others, they didn't have the guts to say anything. It's up to them what they want to think. It's not something I need to worry about. Feng Ling stared at him for a long while, and her heart inexplicably relaxed a little. No wonder Han Jin and Xiao Su didn't seem to have changed when they talked to her recently, but they no longer acted like brothers. It turned out that they knew about it. When she was in Cambodia, she was in a coma and underwent surgery for so many days. Han Jin and Xiao Su were also there at that time. It was possible that they knew about it. Both of them were tight-lipped people, so there was indeed nothing to worry about. However, she still said, I've hidden it in the base for so long. If my gender is exposed because of you, I won't let you off. The man chuckled. His laughter seemed to come from his chest. He suddenly reached out and pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and bit her lips. How do you want to let me off? And she hurriedly put her hand on the bedpost and looked at the man who pressed her here. Looking at the man's handsome face, her heart faintly trembled. This feeling of her heart became more and more obvious day by day. Especially after returning to the base, she returned to her original living environment. She found that her feelings for Li Nanheng seemed to be really very special, different from others. If my thing is exposed, I'll pester you for the rest of my life. Feng Ling didn't know where she learned these words from, but these words suddenly came out of his lips. The man immediately looked at her, and then his brows were shrouded in a layer of smile. What are you smiling at? She wondered if the sour lines she had just learned were a little too boring. She was about to explain when she heard the man say while holding her tightly, Then I'll pester you for the rest of my life. Looking into his deep eyes, she instantly felt an inexplicable palpitation, and even her mind went blank for several seconds. Her heart moved, and she suddenly took the initiative to tiptoe and kiss the man's lips. It was just a kiss, and she was about to push him away. However, when they were less than 2 fingers apart, the man suddenly pressed her back into his arms. Chapter 992. Although the sky outside was already dark, but the light in the room was very bright. The height difference was too big, and Feng Ling was leaning against the bedpost. Feng Ling felt a little breathless every time the man held her chin and kissed her. And then every time the man took advantage of her being kissed until she was weak, his hand would reach into her clothes to take advantage of her. Li Nanheng, you can't come to my room like this every day. Feng Ling pushed him, panting, and turned her head to say, We agreed to let me continue to be a man. That's in front of them, not in front of me. The man's voice came close to her lips. In front of me, be your little woman again. Feng Ling wanted to say that she probably wouldn't be able to be a little woman in this lifetime, but the next second, she was suddenly lifted up. She let out a low cry, and the man directly sat on the bed, letting her sit on his lap. She placed her hands on his shoulders, and her eyes were still somewhat frightened. Just now, she almost thought that he was going to press her on the bed and do it. She couldn't help but ask, Don't you plan to go back to your room tonight? I don't want to go back every day. The man kissed her lightly on the lips. When was I not driven back by you? Feng Ling. Sitting on his lap, she really felt that it was a little dangerous. I want to go down, Yu. Before she could finish speaking, the man held the back of her head with one hand, forced her to lower her head, and pressed his lips against hers again. A week later, everyone in 11 Base found a problem. Recently, the elders of the Li family seemed to be frequently entering and leaving the base. Although they did not alight from the car, they seemed to be looking for Boss Li, but Boss Li seemed to be refusing to see them. Another day passed. Last night, Feng Ling trained those brats on the training ground. She trained until very late, and slept at almost 1 o'clock in the night. Li Nanheng did not wait for her, and entered her room in the middle of the night. He directly held the little woman, who was sleeping soundly on the bed, into his arms, and slept with her in his arms for the entire night. The next morning, when Feng Ling opened her eyes and saw Li Nanheng's face, although she was a little dazed, she was not surprised. She pushed him away, and got up to wash up in the bathroom for morning training. After showering, she walked out of the bathroom, and saw the handsome man sitting by her bed. His hair was messy, and his eyes were not as cold and indifferent as usual. There was only a hint of indifference, and there was a hint of laziness and sexiness, when he just woke up in the morning. Who said that last time? After returning to the base, at most you will come to see me at night at most. You will never spend the night in my room. You will never spend the night in my room. Li Nanheng glanced at her, unhurriedly picked up the black coat on the bedside and put it on. After putting on the coat, he said lightly, "I'm going to leave the base for a few days. I'll be back in about a week." The man, Li Feng Feng. Feng you. Ling Li Feng. I Li Feng and Feng. The man, Feng. Li Feng. I was afraid that I would miss you, so I came to hug you to sleep. Is there a problem? It was just a week away from the base. She and Nanheng hadn't spent every day together, had they? It seemed that Boss Li would often go out for a few days when he was busy. He was the person in charge of the base. He had to take care of both inside and outside. 1 week, 7 days. Was there any difference? Feng Ling stood by the bathroom door and pursed her lips. It seems that the things you are going to do this week will be very hard for you. The man looked at her and smiled lightly. You have already begun to miss me? Then he got up, walked over, and pressed her against the bathroom door. He lowered his head and kissed the corner of her mouth. This time, you may not be able to use your phone for the time being. Stay in the base. If you need anything, just tell Han Jin and Xiao Su. They will help you. Feng Ling. Boss, you are going out for 7 days, not 7 years. I have been fine in the base for so many years. What are you worried about? I only worry about you because I love you. Even if you are bitten by a mosquito, my heart will ache. Don't you understand? The man bit her lips. Feng Ling did not speak, but looked up at him. Love her? At this moment, the man's cell phone rang. He kissed her lips again, glanced at her, picked up his cell phone, and turned to go out to answer the call. She didn't know what they were talking about on the phone, but from the man's tone, it seemed that he was impatient. He responded coldly and walked out. When he opened her door and walked out, she felt that the man's footsteps seemed to pause for a moment, but he did not turn back and closed the door for her. The room was silent. For the next 2 days, Li Nanheng was not around. After taking a shower at night, Feng Ling looked at the quiet room without the man. She was really not used to it. And in the past 2 days, her eyelids often twitched. Could it be that Boss was sent out on a dangerous mission? Was his cell phone turned off? At night, Feng Ling turned over and really couldn't sleep. She picked up her cell phone and called Li Nanheng, but the other party's cell phone was indeed turned off. It was the 3rd day after Li Nanheng left the base. In the morning she trained normally. At noon, when it was time to eat, Feng Ling took her 2 little disciples to do intensive training. She was so busy that she did not have time to eat, so she did not hear the various news and things that were spread in the base cafeteria at noon. In the evening, when she finally found time to go to the cafeteria to eat, she heard several members of the other teams at the next table discussing while eating. Boss Li is too fast. I haven't heard that he has a girlfriend before. How did he suddenly get married? Who the F***ck knows. But I heard that the Li family and the Feng family have always been friends. Maybe Boss Li and that Miss Feng have been engaged since childhood. Because of the engagement, he has never had any other girlfriends. Now that the time has come, he should hurry back and marry that beautiful young lady. That's right. Li Nanheng nodded. I seem to have seen that young lady of the Feng family on the news before. The young lady of the Feng family that Boss married should be her, right? She is quite beautiful, and looks like a standard young lady from a respectable family, but she seems to be a little arrogant. But as a woman, it's good to be a little arrogant. It's better to be a little spicy. Our boss probably likes this kind of woman, Haha. Isn't this the only daughter of the Feng family? Then it must be Miss Feng. Boss, you're really lucky with women. This is too sudden. There was no news a few days ago. Today, the news of your marriage was suddenly announced by the media. It really caught me off guard. Chapter 993. So boss suddenly left the base these days because he asked for a marriage leave? That's right. We're getting married in the day, and we're going to consummate our marriage in the evening. Oh, Boss Lee's identity, family background, and everything he has done for so many years are all enviable. I didn't expect that his marriage has already been properly arranged. Marrying such a rich girl, the Feng family's status in Los Angeles is not bad. I'm really envious. Feng Ling lowered her head and gently fiddled with the food on the plate. Suddenly, she lost her appetite. There were all kinds of rumors in the base, but it seemed that no one dared to casually talk about Li Nanheng, especially the topic of Li Nanheng's marriage. But even if she didn't believe it, she couldn't eat the food in front of her. She thought of what Li Nanheng had said recently, and what he had told her before he left this time. As soon as she put a mouthful of rice into her mouth, it tasted like wax. She raised her head to look outside the base cafeteria, then at the people sitting at the table next to her. She got up and went to another table to get a glass of milk to drink. However, when she went to get the milk, she heard people talking about Li Nanheng's marriage again. They also said that they saw the news of the marriage between the famous Li family and the Feng family in Los Angeles today. Feng Ling picked up her cell phone and searched for the keyword Li family in Los Angeles. The search page on her cell phone was full of mini news articles. It was not fake. In the photos in the news, there was a scene of Li Nanheng getting out of the limited edition extended wedding car. The photo only showed a silhouette. She couldn't see the man's eyes or expression. She could only see that he was surrounded by the media, wearing a black suit without a single wrinkle. Even the silhouette was beautiful. He was born to be superior, and no one could match him. When he put on the black uniform, he was an invincible warrior. When he put on the suit, he was superior. As those people said, he was far inferior. The man seemed to be holding a bouquet of white roses in his hand. Feng Ling didn't know what the white roses represented, but in the background of the photo, there was a sea of white roses in front of the Feng family's house. He was going to marry Feng Mingzhu today. He clearly said that Feng Mingzhu was not his fiancée. He clearly said that he didn't have any feelings for Feng Mingzhu. But he still married the daughter of the Feng family. And unbeknownst to her, when she had finally let go of her armor and was ready to embrace the love that had moved her, he had gone to marry someone else. Feng Ling stood in the cafeteria holding her phone and did not move for a long time. When she raised her eyes again, her gaze was calm and dead silent. She abruptly walked out. It was already past dinner time, and the training camp of Team 1 was very quiet. There were only a few members sitting in the corner, chatting and smoking. When they saw Feng Ling, they raised their hands to greet her. But she walked straight into Han Jin's residence with no expression on her face. As soon as she entered, she came to the door of Han Jin's room. She wanted to go in and ask them. They must know what was going on. She was about to knock on the door when she suddenly heard the conversation inside. Xiao Su had just come over and was in the room. From the beginning, when he learned that Boss Li was married to the Feng family, Xiao Su was also very shocked. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. He felt that this was not something Boss Li could do. In the past, he only heard that the Li family seemed to have an engagement with the Feng family, and everyone thought that Feng Mingzhu would marry Li Nanheng. But later it seemed that the situation was not like this, and Boss Li had no intention of marrying Feng Mingzhu. So what on earth was going on? Boss really got married today? Xiao Su sat in Han Jin's room, took out a cigarette, and hesitated to smoke it. Han Jin glanced at him. How could this kind of thing be fake? What about Feng Ling? Boss and Feng Ling are clearly in love recently. Now many people in the base don't know the situation, but we too know very well that Feng Ling is also a woman. How can she stand it? Does Boss plan to have a wife outside and a woman in the base? Does he not lack women to accompany him? Don't talk nonsense. Is Boss that kind of person? I know Boss is not this kind of person, but this is not right. Did he tell Feng Ling anything? Did he suddenly get married? Feng Ling is still waiting for him to come back in the base. Even if boss comes back, he will be a married man. What does he think of Feng Ling? Seeing Xiao Su's expression, Han Jin was puzzled. Boss has his own ideas. We all know how he treats Feng Ling. But the matter between the Li family and the Feng family is not so simple. He also has his responsibility. In front of the person he likes and the responsibility, boss chose the responsibility, which is what a man should bear. What about Feng Ling? Feng Ling is still young. In fact, she just had a fruitless relationship. Even if she knows about this, she will be sad for a few days. Sad for a few days? Do you expect Feng Ling to fall in love with someone else? Didn't you find that she is gradually opening up to boss? She is not as boring as before. She has Boss Lee in her heart, but she doesn't express it. Now if she knows, I guess she won't say anything. Then don't say it. It's good for everyone to live in peace. Damn it. When you saw the two of them together, you were the first one who was excited. Now boss got married and left Feng Ling in the base. And you say this kind of thing? What can I say? I can drag Boss Lee over and force him to marry Feng Ling. You know the status of the Li family. Even if Boss Lee is willing to come back and marry Feng Ling now, those elders are already very merciful. They are already very merciful if they don't cut Feng Ling into pieces, okay? So what's going on now? It means that when Boss Lee was feeling empty in the base, he found out that Feng Ling was a woman. And then he suddenly had a girl to entertain him. And a girl like Feng Ling is just a pastime for him. He just wants her and throws her away as he pleases. Don't be so extreme. Boss didn't say this kind of thing. In my eyes, this is what Boss Lee means now. Seeing that Xiao Su was not calm at this moment, Han Jin didn't have the patience to care about these things. After all, this was Boss Lee's own decision. Until now, no one knew what happened. Han Jin sneered. Damn it, she is just a woman. We are all adults. They just fell in love. So what? Compared with Miss Feng of the Feng family, Feng Ling is an orphan with an unknown identity. As long as you are not stupid, you will know who to choose. Chapter 994. Xiao Su suddenly smashed the ashtray on the table to the ground. What the hell are you talking about? Han Jin said with a straight face. It's not Boss Lee who dumped you. Why are you so King excited? I've liked so many women since I was a child. And I've slept with many women before entering the base. If they all waited for me to marry them, I would have already had a group of wives and concubines. Why do I still need to be a drill master in the base? In the end, Han Jin kicked the chair impatiently. Isn't she just a little girl who disguised as a man and hid in the base for a long time? She's not feminine at all and so violent. It's okay for her to be a comrade. But it's normal for him to be surprised when he accidentally found out that she is a woman. Why do you think she is worthy of Boss Lee giving up the engagement with the Feng family? Do you dare to say that Boss Lee's love for Feng Ling is just a coincidence? Otherwise, which man will be faithful to a woman until death? Are you stupid? He doesn't like Feng Ling. Liking her doesn't mean he has to take responsibility. A silly girl like Feng Ling is not suitable for him. Then why the F***CK, did you help me set them up? I didn't know Feng Ling was a woman when we were matchmakers. I found out later, but now he's married to the Feng family. What else can I say? Han Jin knew that he was annoyed and said something against his will. But when he thought that Li Nanheng was married to the Feng family, he didn't want to talk about this matter anymore. So he said, Feng Ling and Boss shouldn't be in the same world. If it weren't for the base, the two of them would have nothing to do with each other. I guess Feng Ling knows very well that it's good for them to go their separate ways in the future. Boss, you're not from the same world. If it weren't for the base, the two of them would have nothing to do with each other. I guess Feng Ling knows it very well. Han Jin said again. Feng Ling is an orphan. She doesn't even know who her parents are. Will you marry her? If they don't belong to the same world, they shouldn't force their way in. She should fall in love while she is young. When she grows up, she will know not to trust men easily. I think Boss Lee taught her a good lesson. At least she won't be easily cheated in the future. After all, she is too naive. Han Jin didn't know what to say, but looking at Xiao Su's furious expression, He just wanted to get this matter over with as soon as possible. After all, they didn't know what Bosley was thinking, but since it was over, they could only think from another perspective. One of them was angry, while the other was impatient. The thin wooden door was unable to suppress the intense voices. No one noticed that there was a person standing outside the door. He stood there, his eardrums swollen from the argument between the two men in the room. Strangely, the place that was shattered seemed to be somewhere else. Feng Ling just thought that Li Nanheng wouldn't do such a thing. She felt that there must be a reason for this matter. Usually, Han Jin and Xiao Su had been following Li Nanheng, and they were the first to know everything. They would definitely know what had happened. However, the fierce quarrel in the room made her heart, which had been pounding since she heard the news in the cafeteria, completely calm down. Not only did it quiet down, it was stuck in its chest. He was motionless as if he was dead, separated by a door. The people in the room were still arguing fiercely. The people outside the door paused for a moment and left quietly. Feng Ling left. When she stepped out of the training camp of Team 1, Fatai happened to come back at this time. He walked too fast and bumped into her arm. When he looked back and saw it was her, he hurriedly asked her, "Feng Ling, why are you here? Did you also hear that boss is getting married? Did you also come to ask for wedding candies? I tell you, boss is so mean. He didn't even tell the base that he was getting married. Now, not only did he not drink the wedding wine, but he also didn't eat the wedding candies." Although they usually made fun of Feng Ling and Bosley, many men were very simple in their bones. What could two men do? They just fooled around. Since Boss was married today, the Feng family's daughter was Mrs. Li, and this Feng Ling was still the Feng Ling of their base. There was no change. Seeing Feng Ling didn't speak, Fatai was about to press her shoulder, but coincidentally, he pressed the place where she was bitten by the snake. Feng Ling instantly retracted her arm, as if she had been electrocuted. She remembered that day on the stone platform under the cliff of the Snake Valley. Li Nanheng cut her wound with a cross knife and sucked out the poisonous blood for her regardless of his own safety. That day, she was cold and numb all over. Only the wound he sucked out was faintly hot, which made her feel that she was still alive. Looking at the man in front of her who had been trying to save her, she knew that there was someone in this world who cared so much about her life. And now, the small place on her shoulder with the cross knife mark had no warmth at all. Even if it was just pressed like this, she couldn't help trembling in pain. For so many years, Feng Ling had never felt that it was so long to walk from the training camp of Team 1 to the training camp of the sniper team. Even though it was past dinner time, the teenagers who had just entered the base were still receiving training. They ran 4 laps around the base, and from time to time, someone called her name. Brother Feng, Feng Ling, Master Feng Ling. There were also some people assigned to other teams who had only heard of her name and did not recognize her. As they ran, they looked in this direction blankly, only to see a thin figure walking in the dark of the base. She didn't say a word, and just returned to the training camp of the sniper team. She wanted to go back to her room to stay alone, but found that it was terribly quiet now. No one could get close to the sniper team, including the newcomers who were running laps. It was too quiet, so quiet that her heart felt a little empty. She simply turned to the empty training ground of the sniper team, picked up the sniper rifle that had only 5 bullets left, and fired a shot in the direction of the target that was as far as 500 meters away on the training ground. Bang! The distance of 500 meters, even the fastest bullet had to fly for a while. 2 seconds later, she hit the bullseye. In her 4th year in the base, when she didn't know whether she was 17 or 18 years old, she achieved the standard target of 500 meters and hit the bullseye. Then what else? She wanted to stay in 11 base and stay here forever. But just like what Han Jin said, some people were just moved and impulsive for a short period of time. Was she going to pester others to take responsibility for her? But if she saw him in the base in the future, how should she face him? Bang, 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 bang. Another 4 shots. 500 meters. Every shot hit the bullseye. At this moment, Feng Ling knew that with her results in the sniper team, even if she didn't take the assessment, she had already graduated. Chapter 995. She had never thought that she would encounter such a thing. The environment that she was used to in the past suddenly seemed to be an ice cave, with ice thorns everywhere. She felt pain all over her body with every step she took. She walked to the gate of 11 base in a daze and wanted to go out, but she still stopped. When she walked to the gate, she looked blankly at the wide suburb night outside the base. She was asking Feng Ji, did she do anything wrong? If she didn't do anything wrong, why did she have to be treated like this? If she didn't do anything wrong, why did she have to leave? The girl standing in front of the base turned and walked back. She was thinking. In fact, there were still many clues. For example, she had long heard of the engagement between the Li family and the Feng family. But when Li Nanheng said he wouldn't marry Feng Mingzhu, she believed him. But she forgot the status of the Li family and the Feng family in the American Chinese community. If it wasn't true, how could they allow such rumors to spread? And even the noble Miss Feng often talked about it. For example, Li Nanheng seemed to be very polite to the Feng family. When she took back the bag for the old lady on the street, she could feel it when they had dinner that night. Although Li Nanheng didn't talk much, he was usually arrogant and domineering in front of the Feng family, which meant that the Li family and the Feng family were indeed very familiar with each other. For example, Li Nanheng only left the base for a few days, but he seemed to be saying goodbye before he left. Feng Ling stood on the training ground for a long time and looked at her phone. It was already more than an hour later than the usual time when Li Nanheng went back to rest. She looked up at Li Nanheng's room. The light in the room was off. Even though she knew that he wouldn't come back at this time, at that moment, Feng Ling really hoped that a miracle would happen. She hoped that the light in the room would be on, and she hoped that Li Nanheng would come out of the window, stand on the balcony smoking, squint at her with a faint smile, and then mock her. Fool, how dare you believe all the rumors? It wasn't until she was tired of standing that she looked away from the dark room and walked straight to the door. Kay couldn't find Feng Ling that night. When he heard the gunshots, he came down to have a look, but he didn't see her. He didn't know where she had gone until Feng Ling returned downstairs. As soon as she saw Kay squatting in front of the door smoking, Feng Ling looked at him calmly, as if she didn't see him, and walked past him. Hey, Feng Ling! Seeing that she was back, Kay suddenly stood up and stamped out the cigarette butt. Let's go and play cards. They want to play with us today. And they also called the new drill master. There are not many training tasks on the weekend tomorrow. Let's play until dawn. Feng Ling shook her head and walked in steadily. She didn't need others to distract her in this way. And she didn't need others to accompany her. She was clear about her own affairs. And she knew what she should and shouldn't do. She was just careless when she should have been guarding her heart. That's all. Feng Ling, I'm calling you to play cards. Kay called her again. I'm not fighting anymore. You guys fight. How can you not go? We want a 3v3. However, no matter what Kay said, Feng Ling still went upstairs without looking back. Seeing Feng Ling like this, Kay stood there helplessly. He could see that the relationship between Boss Li and Feng Ling was not a simple brotherly relationship. But the elders of the Li family probably wouldn't accept the fact that Boss Li liked men. He felt that if Boss Li didn't get married, he would be unfilial. But if he did, he would be heartless. No matter what he did, he wouldn't be a good person. Feng Ling went back to her room. But after taking a shower, she couldn't fall asleep. At 1 o'clock in the morning, when there was no one around, she went out to run laps in a white short-sleeved t-shirt. She didn't know how long she ran. In short, she ran until she was panting violently and sweating all over. She was so tired that she felt that she could lie on the bed and fall asleep at any time. Then she dragged her tired body back to her room. This time, after taking a shower, she lay on the bed. Her body was so tired that she couldn't even get up. But she still didn't feel sleepy at all. She just closed her eyes and forced herself to sleep for a while. 20 minutes later, she opened her eyes. Her heart was beating fast after the exercise, but she found that she couldn't feel her heartbeat. It seemed that she was very numb. She couldn't fall asleep, so she suddenly got up, went to the corner of the room, and opened a cabinet there. There were 3 bottles of wine in the cabinet, 1 bottle of white wine, 1 bottle of foreign wine, and 1 bottle of red wine. These were all given to her by Han Jin several times when he was in a good mood, but she didn't drink them. She had given Boss Lee wine once before, but Han Jin had too many bottles of wine and gave them to whoever he liked. Maybe because Han Jin liked her so much, he simply gave her several bottles. Feng Ling didn't know which kind of wine was good, so she took out the 58 proof brandy, opened the window with the bottle, and looked at the dark balcony next door. Then she leaned against the balcony railing, raised the bottle, and took a sip. She had never drunk this kind of brandy before. It didn't taste good, but it didn't seem to be as bad as those white wine. She smacked her lips a few times and felt that there seemed to be a little sweetness in her mouth. The sweetness after the wine was very wonderful. She never drank, so she really couldn't sleep tonight. Anyway, according to Kay and the others' understanding of her, if she was too drunk to get out of bed tomorrow and didn't go to training, Kay and the others would find a suitable reason to ask for leave for her. In short, it didn't matter even if she was drunk. Get drunk once. She would forget everything after getting drunk once. The short-haired girl leaned against the balcony, raised the wine in her hand again, took a big sip, and then swallowed it with a frown. And then one sip after another, and another sip after another. But even though she felt that she was in a trance, Feng Ling felt that she was unprecedentedly sober. She knew very well that behind the name Feng Ling was an unknown orphan, a small role who couldn't bring any benefits to the Li family, and an existence that even she didn't know how to survive in this world. Early the next morning, Feng Ling, who had slept drunk on the balcony all night, felt her body was suddenly cold and hot, and her head was splitting. She turned over and opened her eyes, only to find that she had fallen asleep on the balcony. The weather last night was almost -3 or 4 degrees, but she actually fell asleep here in a short-sleeved t-shirt. Enduring the headache, she was about to sit up, but suddenly she heard a violent and urgent knock on the door. Chapter 996. The knocking on the door did not stop, and it was very urgent. She struggled to get up from the ground, but her legs were so weak that she staggered and fell directly into the French window that had been open all night. Her head hit the leg of the table near the window, and she felt a strong sense of dizziness in her head. Then the door was suddenly kicked open. She raised her head, opened her eyes, and saw that it was several members of the other teams of the base who came in. After coming in, they looked at her expressionlessly, and then quickly opened all the drawers in her room, rummaged through all her things, and put them into a big bag. Then they picked up the 2 suitcases she put under the bed and walked out. "What are you doing?" Seeing their movements, Feng Ling had a bad feeling in her heart. She frowned and asked hoarsely. At the same time, the other 2 members came over and pulled her up from the ground. Feeling the heat on her arms and the strong smell of alcohol on her body, they directly carried her out. "Let me go." Feng Ling tried to struggle, but now her strength seemed to have been hollowed out. She couldn't even stand steadily, but she was carried out by the 2 people. When those people opened her drawer expressionlessly and took away all her things, she already had a strong premonition. These people suddenly rushed in and acted so rudely. Maybe her gender had been discovered. But who was going to take away her things? Feng Ling was so uncomfortable that she didn't even have the strength to struggle. When she was taken to the widest training ground opposite the base hall, she was still in a trance and didn't have time to look at the members of the base standing around. It seemed that the members of all the teams were here, almost forming a circle nearby. Then she saw the elders standing in front of her. They were the elders of the Li family. For so many years, they had never directly appeared in the base. Usually, they just passed by in cars and never showed up in front of so many people. Just as Feng Ling's heart was beating wildly, those people took her over to the elders of the Li family and threw her to the ground mercilessly. Feng Ling was originally lifted up and could not stand steadily. This time she fell forward to the ground. The ground here was full of mud and gravel. Under the short-sleeved t-shirt, the skin on his hands and forearms were instantly scraped. It was a burning pain, and even his knees were knocked hard on the ground. At the moment when Feng Ling was pushed to the ground, the people behind her poured all the things in the bags to the ground, opened her 2 suitcases, took them to the elders of the Li family, and laid them flat. All the things placed in them fell into everyone's eyes. Seeing the packs of sanitary napkins on the ground, and the long strips of cloth in the suitcase, which were suspected to be chest wrappings, the members of the base all looked at her differently. Some were surprised, some were enlightened, and some were confused. Was Feng Ling really a woman? Feng Ling raised her head with some difficulty. Her eyes were filled with the discomfort of the hangover, and the anger in her heart, because the truth had been revealed. More and more red veins appeared in her eyes. She grabbed the hard soil on the ground, and raised her head to look at the elders who were looking at her with disdain and anger. Feng Ling, do you need us to say more? Li Junyan looked at the things used by women on the ground, and his eyes were filled with dissatisfaction and disdain. Feng Ling's hands were still gripping the ground tightly, and she looked at him with reddened eyes. He was Li Nanheng's biological grandfather. Last time, when she was in trouble in the military, in order to protect Li Nanheng's image, he had more or less spoken up for her in front of the military. Although his direct purpose was to protect Li Nanheng and the Li family's image, they had still met once. Li Nanheng's eyes were red. The other elders stood behind Li Junyan and whispered to each other. Mingzhu has always suspected this. I didn't believe it, but I didn't expect it to be true. Fortunately, Mingzhu found the evidence. Otherwise, we wouldn't have come here. If we didn't know about this, we would have allowed such a little girl to stir up trouble in the base. That's right. It's outrageous. A young girl actually pretended to be a man and mingled with a group of men. Nanheng was so protective of her and ignored the Feng family's engagement. I think he must have been bewitched by this little vixen. These words were just a private discussion among the elders. Boss Li Junyan still looked coldly at Feng Ling, who was lying on the ground. You hid in the base for so long. What's your purpose? Kay and the others were also in the crowd. When they saw those things, they knew that the rumors were true. However, seeing Feng Ling lying there in a dazed and seemingly weak state, they remembered that Boss Li had just gotten married yesterday. It must have hurt her a lot. Today, the elders of the Li family actually came to find her. Looking at the things on the ground, it proved that she was indeed a woman. Kay and the members of the sniper team looked at each other, and their faces were all a bit ugly. Of course, their faces were ugly not because the fact that Feng Ling was a woman had been exposed, but because Feng Ling looked like she could be slaughtered at any time, which really made them unable to bear it. However, the elders of the Li family were all here, and they couldn't say or do anything. If they stood up to help Feng Ling up now, the rumor that Feng Ling had messed up the base would be confirmed. They would say that she had an ambiguous relationship with the men in the base, which would only hurt her more. I'll give you two choices. First, tell me your purpose and the reason for staying in the base, and then pack up and get out of the base. Second, throw away all your things and get out. Li Junyan narrowed his eyes coldly at Feng Ling, who was lying on the ground. It took Feng Ling a long time to find the strength to speak, but her voice was low and hoarse. Even if she wanted to speak clearly, her voice couldn't be much higher. The dizziness in her mind almost made her collapse, but in such a situation, she had to stay awake. Chapter 997. Aren't you ashamed to say that? 11 Base never accepts women, but you disguised yourself as a man for so long in order to sneak into the base? I've lived like this since I was a child. I didn't deliberately disguise myself. I was like this before I entered the base. Seeing that she couldn't hide it anymore, Feng Ling simply told the truth. For me, there's no difference between a man and a woman. It doesn't make any difference. You're a woman mingling with men. You say it doesn't make any difference. But as long as anyone knows that you're a woman, do you think these guys who don't even have a chance to see a woman in the base won't be tempted? I think you're shameless to a certain extent. If we found out a little later, your room would have been a brothel. Hearing Grandfather Li's words, Kay and the others immediately frowned, especially Kay, who couldn't help but come out and say, No, Mr. Li, if you know Feng Ling's character, you'll know that she can't do that kind of thing. She usually keeps a distance from many people in the base, and even the members of our sniper team don't often hang out with her. She's very cold to others. It's definitely not what you think. Her character is definitely worth testing, And she has always adhered to the system of the base. Tam hurriedly pulled Kay back and lowered his voice to say, "Don't talk. Don't you see that Mr. Li is angry?" Of course, Kay knew that, but it was too much to say that to Feng Ling. Grandfather Li first turned his eyes to Kay's face, and then coldly looked at Feng Ling, who was lying on the ground. "She stinks of alcohol, and can't even arrive on time for training. Obviously, she has a hangover all night. How can you say that she adheres to the system of the base, and that her character is worth testing?" Kay was speechless. Yesterday, it was not surprising that Feng Ling drank last night, but this kind of thing couldn't be explained here at all. If Mr. Li knew that the relationship between Feng Ling and Boss Li had already gone beyond the scope of ambiguity, perhaps he would only be more ruthless. Stinks of alcohol. Feng Ling suddenly wanted to laugh. She raised her eyes to look at the coldness in Grandfather Li's eyes. She wanted to regain her dignity and wanted to get up, but found that she couldn't do it at this moment. All her private things were thrown around for everyone to see, and became the topic of conversation. She lay on the ground, looking up at the real owner of 11 Base. Even if Li Nanheng was the behind-the-scenes boss of 11 Base, Grandfather Li was his grandfather and his elder. No matter what, Grandfather Li was still above him. So, her dignity was trampled underfoot. Thus, she really laughed and slowly let go of the mud that had been crushed by her. She said in a low voice, "I'm very sorry to let Elder Li see me in such a sorry state. People say that as long as you do one thing wrong, everything you've done will be denied. So I've already been denied by 11 Base, right? Really? How dare you ask me? What right do you have to ask me?" Li Junyan scolded coldly. "It's already polite of us to use this method to confirm that you are a woman instead of asking people to strip you naked. Do you think you can still stay in 11 Base?" Hearing this, the only hope in Feng Ling's heart was instantly shattered. She had once thought that if she could no longer keep her secret, perhaps she would find a suitable time to leave. Perhaps she would die outside during a mission. That way no one would know about it. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. However, it seemed that everything did not go in the direction she thought. She was actually kicked out of 11 Base, in such a humiliating way. She was about to be kicked out of this place, where she had lived for several years, the home she thought was her home. She lowered her head and continued to laugh, digging her fingers into the mud again. "So Mr. Li, do you mean to drive me away today?" she asked hoarsely, seeing her lying on the ground weakly, but still so proud. The other elders walked over and said coldly, "Little girl, who gave you the courage to live in 11 Base for so long? What the base taught you is to show how powerful you are as a woman here. Everything you have now is given to you by 11 Base. I think the money you have earned from missions over the years is enough for you, an orphan with no parents, to live a good life outside. We didn't confiscate all your things, but just let you leave the base. Why do you come back to bite us? An orphan with no parents." Feng Ling gritted her teeth, and finally managed to sit up. Sitting on the ground, no one came to help her. Most people didn't want to help her, and a small number of people didn't dare to help her. She staggered to her feet with great effort, but she stood there swaying with the smell of alcohol all over her body. When she finally stood firm, her legs were so weak that she could fall at any time. She smiled and raised her eyes to look at them. "So you've investigated me thoroughly, and then came to the base to throw my things on the ground, just to let everyone see that I, Feng Ling, am a woman. And then under such circumstances, you chased me away and made it impossible for me to return to 11 Base in the future, right? You still want to come back?" The elders immediately glanced at her coldly, their eyes full of disdain. Feng Ling smiled coldly. "Since I was driven out so shamelessly and disgracefully, how could I come back? It's good that you know. The base will not accept you again." With that, the elders turned around and walked into the base hall with the help of a few base members who were good at reading eyes. Obviously, they would no longer pay attention to her. Since the elders had left, the people around them didn't dare to watch anymore, and gradually dispersed. However, there were still people who would point in her direction and make comments. Then they looked at her flat chest under the t-shirt, and felt it was strange. Then they talked about the chest wrappings in the box. There were all kinds of topics. But no one mentioned why Feng Ling couldn't stay. Why couldn't a woman stay? When those people walked far away and walked to the training ground that only they were qualified to set foot on to do daily training, Feng Ling stood on the empty ground. Behind her was the cold door of the base that had been closed, and at her feet were her things and 2 suitcases thrown all over the ground. She silently looked at the ground under her feet, looked at the things at her feet, and then staggered back, slowly bent down with some difficulty to pick up the things on the ground. Chapter 998. What should we do? Lin Chung and Tam looked back at Lei Peng, who was standing behind them, and then the 3 of them looked at Kay, who had been frowning. Almost everyone on the field had left, and there were only a few people left. These people were all very familiar with Feng Ling, including the members of Team 1. Old Master Li was here. If they went up to help, it would be a slap to Old Master Li's face. If some busybody went to Old Master Li and told him, none of them would end up well. But seeing Feng Ling like this, they really couldn't stand it anymore. How do I know? Boss Li hasn't come back yet. I'm afraid he doesn't know something happened in the base. How could Boss know? I heard that Boss won't be back for at least 7 days. And for some reason, it seems that it's not convenient to contact him recently. His phone is not turned on. Try calling Boss Li? Do you have Boss's phone number? I do, Kay said as he picked up his phone. But after making the call, he put it down not long after and said in a muffled voice, "It's turned off." What the F***CK do you guys think is going on? Feng Ling is actually a woman. She's usually so powerful, but she's actually a woman. This is enough to destroy my worldview. But a woman is a woman. She didn't do anything wrong. Why was she suddenly driven out like this? And Feng Ling reeks of alcohol and looks pale. Is she sick? Now that she's driven out of the base in such a situation, if something happens to her outside, when Boss comes back and asks about it, we'll all be in trouble. If only Boss is in the base. If Boss is here, who dares to do this to Feng Ling? Haha, Boss is now with his newlywed wife. How can he care about Feng Ling? Don't talk nonsense. I always feel that Boss has some difficulties. Everyone knows how he treats Feng Ling. Feng Ling is too pitiful now. I really can't stand it anymore. How can we contact Boss? If he could be easily contacted, do you think these old men would take this opportunity to come over? They clearly want to drive Feng Ling out. Her face is completely ruined. Even if Boss Li goes to find her in the future, she probably won't return to the base. This is the effect they want. They want her to leave by herself. This is too much. Feng Ling's legs really couldn't support her. Originally, she wanted to bend down, but in the end, she still knelt on the ground. The dizziness in her mind was too severe. The influence of the wine last night was too great. Right now, her whole body was cold, but when she touched her arm, it seemed to be boiling hot. Could it be that he got a fever from the cold wind after he passed out on the balcony last night? She slowly raised her hand and slowly picked up the things on the ground one by one. She put the sanitary napkin and breast wrap into the suitcase, and then put them under the clothes. Then she picked up the other clothes and things one by one. She couldn't stand up and didn't have the strength to, so she just lay on the ground and stretched out her arms to pick them up. When she finished packing a suitcase, she put her hands on the ground and took a deep breath. Just when she was about to pick up other things to pack up another suitcase, suddenly, a hand reached over. She paused, turned around and saw Kay, who had walked over without her noticing. "Let me help you." Kay's face darkened. Without saying anything, he picked up the things that had been thrown all over the ground and handed them to her. Feng Ling sat on the ground, looked at Kay's face, slowly withdrew her gaze and said lightly, "Thank you." Hearing that she still didn't want to show too much emotion, Kay frowned slightly. Boss Li doesn't know these things yet. Do you want to wait for him to come back? Feng Ling took the things he handed over and didn't say anything because he mentioned Nanheng. She turned her head and continued to put the things into the suitcase. Seeing that she didn't want to mention Boss Li now, Kay didn't say anything more and just continued to help her pick up things. Then, more and more people came to Feng Ling. Kay, Tam, Lei Peng, Lin Chung, and the other 4 members of the sniper team were all helping her pick up things. After a while, Fat Tai, who had been hesitating not far away, also quickly came to help Dahu and many other people. Many of the people who had interacted with her and gone on missions with her came back at the same time, less than 10 minutes after they left. Feng Ling looked at them and didn't speak until Kay picked her up from the ground and looked at her with a frown. "Why are you so hot?" "I'm fine, thank you." Her identity as a woman had been exposed. Feng Ling didn't want to affect them and was about to pull her hand out of his arm. Kay held her tightly. "Why are you acting like an outsider? In my eyes, whether you are a man or a woman, you are my brother. There is no difference. You can't leave now. Even if the Li family's grandfather wants to drive you away, he didn't ask you to leave now. You have a fever. Go to the infirmary to find Dr. Wan and take some medicine." "No." Feng Ling lowered her head helplessly. She couldn't break free from him. Her strength was really no match for theirs, so she could only lower her head and say softly, "Sorry, I lied to you for so long." The eyes of the people around her instantly reddened because of her apology. Even though they were all men, they were suddenly affected by such an atmosphere in an instant and felt a little sentimental. "Why are you apologizing? In our eyes, it doesn't matter whether you are a man or a woman. We only know Feng Ling Dahu of Team One side. But I didn't expect that such a thing would happen so soon after Boss Li left. If Boss Li was here, it doesn't make any difference whether he is here or not. Boss Li is so busy. Don't bother him," Feng Ling said lightly and then took the suitcase. "Goodbye." Seeing that she was about to leave, Kay and Tam looked at each other and pulled her arm hard. "No, if you don't want to stay in the base now, we'll send you to a small hotel nearby. We'll wait for Boss Li to come back." Feng Ling didn't speak and walked out. They still stopped in front of her. Especially Kay. "Feng Ling, wait for Boss Li to come back." Feng Ling suddenly smiled and raised her bloodshot eyes to look at him. "He's already married. Why should I wait for him?" Kay and the others were instantly speechless. Chapter 999. He was already married. Who could stop her? What other reason could there be to stop her? Feng Ling was not the only one who couldn't accept the fact that Li Nanheng suddenly got married. No one had expected this, so no one could say anything to make her accept it. She used to think that it was just a little bit of intimacy between men beyond the scope of friendship. But now Feng Ling was a woman. It was impossible that Boss Li didn't know, but he got married. Seeing that Feng Ling was weak but still carrying the suitcase, Kay hurriedly pulled her suitcase and said, "There are still a lot of things in your room that haven't been packed. It's too embarrassing to leave with the suitcase. Go back and pack yourself first." The corners of Feng Ling's mouth moved slightly, but it was clearly not a smile. Even the most embarrassing situation is only like this. How embarrassing can it be? Kay couldn't speak, but even if he knew there was no suitable reason to persuade her, he still pulled her suitcase hard. "Feng Ling, don't go." Feng Ling paused but didn't look back. She clenched the handle of the suitcase tightly. "I said wait for Boss Li to come back, because the rule that women are not allowed to enter the base is an old rule, and should have been changed long ago. You absolutely meet the standard in all aspects. There can be female soldiers in the army. Why can't our 11 base have female soldiers? We will never look at you with prejudice. We grew up and trained together in the base. This kind of relationship can't be eliminated because of gender differences. If you have any difficulties, we can help you. But if you leave now Feng Ling lowered her head to look at the shoes on her feet. They were all muddy and dirty. Her pants were also covered in mud from falling on the ground. Her entire body was in a mess, and her arms were burning with pain. There were all kinds of bloody scratches on her skin. She had always been incompatible with this place, including Li Nanheng. No matter how hard Kay tried, he could still feel that Feng Ling was forcibly pulling the suitcase away. She really wanted to leave, and had no intention of hesitating or compromising. Feng Ling, seal." Kay finally let go under her insistence. She put the suitcases on both sides of her body. Even though she was in a mess, she stood upright. The people around her looked at her and saw her determination. There was heartache and reluctance in their eyes. But everyone knew that what Grandfather Li did today was to make it impossible for her to turn back. Not to mention these members, even Drill Master Han Jin and Xiao Su, who were usually in charge, couldn't even say a word at this time. The Li family was very angry because she, a woman, had been in the base for so many years. If someone kept persuading her, it was estimated that many people would suffer. Furthermore, Boss Li wasn't here right now. The few elders were like God here, and no one could resist them. Feng Ling still left. From the moment she stepped out of 11 base, she was no longer a person of this place. She had no right to use any means of transportation here, so she couldn't drive. The only thing she could take away was her shabby suitcase. As for those left in the room, they were just some toiletries and combat clothes. After leaving 11 base, she couldn't wear the combat clothes here anymore. It didn't matter whether she took them or not. Other things would definitely be thrown away and destroyed as soon as possible. Things related to her would probably be shameful in 11 base from now on. She had gone back and forth in front of the gate of 11 base countless times. But there had never been a time like this. When he walked to the door, he looked at the railing below the main door, lifted his foot and stepped over it, then walked straight out. A few minutes later, Feng Ling's figure gradually disappeared in front of the main gate of the base. She stopped but didn't look back. She just stood there for 2 seconds before continuing to walk forward expressionlessly. Kay and the others stood at the gate of the base looking at her back, their eyes red, but they couldn't say a word. How could this be? Why did it become like this? Who can find a way to contact Boss? If Boss doesn't come back, Feng Ling will really leave. The elders of the Li family clearly know that Boss has been protecting Feng Ling, so they deliberately drove Feng Ling away when Boss was not here. Today they even gathered so many people here to watch. Now even if Boss can bring Feng Ling back, Feng Ling can't continue to stay here as a man. How can she continue to survive here? Be rational. But what did Feng Ling do wrong? She is not as delicate as a woman at all. Tell me, when did she cheat in training and assessment? When was she not the best one? What's the point of saying this? In Los Angeles, there were not many scenes of sleet. However, it snowed today, and the temperature was not low enough, so it became sleet. There were not many vehicles around 11 base, and no car dared to casually approach the vicinity. Under normal circumstances, people who wanted to leave 11 base had to drive out by the base's car, or other means of transportation sent by the base. But now, Feng Ling admitted that she shouldn't have drunk last night. As long as she didn't drink and didn't lie outside for so long, she wouldn't become like this. Even if she was found to be a woman, at least she wouldn't be lying on the ground and being insulted by others. But now it was too late to say anything. What she shouldn't have done the most was to let Li Nanheng steal her heart so easily. She shouldn't have given all her bottom line to him. Her biggest mistake was to fall in love with Li Nanheng. She just liked him. She didn't know what love was. But what was the pain in her heart that had spread to her limbs and bones since yesterday? Was it just love? If it was just love, how could it hurt to this extent? It turned out that one day, she could also learn to love. It turned out that the word love was really like what others said, it would hurt. After walking less than a kilometer away from the base, Feng Ling already felt the terrible feeling of collapsing after 15 hours of continuous devil training. Accompanied by a sudden clap of thunder, she raised her head to look at the cloudy sky and the falling snow. It seemed that there was still rain in the snow. The snow was getting heavier, and the rain was getting heavier. Feng Ling pushed the suitcase in her hand forward and stepped on the long suburban road ahead, letting the rain and snow slap on her face, as if she didn't feel anything. It was rare to see thunder in this season. Chapter 1000. A gust of cold wind blew through the snow and rain. Feng Ling didn't notice that she was trembling, but her body had been trembling. Her legs, which had no strength, were about to lose feeling. The sleet was getting heavier and heavier, and the lightning flashed and the thunder roared as if it were summer. But it was winter. However, the snow was still fine. The rain soaked her clothes and brought the coldness of the snow in. Feng Ling was already exhausted. She looked at the dark clouds in the sky, raised her head, and let the cold snow and rain slap her face. Her pale face became paler. After walking for so long, there were no vehicles passing by, as if this road could lead to the end of her life. But what was there to be afraid of? She had no worries. She gradually staggered and her eyes gradually blurred. When she completely lost feeling in her legs, the two suitcases suddenly rolled down the slope in front of the suburban road. Feng Ling's eyes blurred. She wanted to bend down to pull the suitcases back, but she fell headfirst into the cold ground, rolled down several times, and finally fell to the side of the road motionless. 11 base. Kay and the others stood in front of the door for a long time. Seeing the change of the weather, they were more worried about Feng Ling's situation. They wanted to drive out to send her to a safe place. But when they were about to drive out, the door was blocked by several people. Mr. Li said that except for Feng Ling, no other members of the base are allowed to leave today. Otherwise, they will bear the consequences. Kay held the steering wheel and couldn't wait to drive the car and knock these people out. But the root of the problem was Mr. Li. Without Mr. Li's order, no one dared to stop them here. This is too much. Fat Tai sat in the back of the car, and his eyes were red with anger. How can Feng Ling walk alone in this weather? The people sitting in the car were silent. A few minutes later, they got out of the car and rushed back to the base hall in the snow and rain. Looking at the closed door of the hall, they stood in a row and looked at the door quietly. In the base hall, several elders were watching the surveillance footage of the sniper teams training every day. They watched Feng Ling and the other team members together. Suddenly, someone came in and said, "Elderly, for members of the sniper team, a member of Team 1. And those people who are usually close to Feng Ling are standing outside in the rain. I don't know what they're trying to do." Feng Ling's expression changed. The elders immediately looked out of the window and saw the tough members of the base standing outside in a row, motionless in the cold snow and rain. Li Junyin's gaze turned cold. What are they doing? Are more than 10 people standing outside to threaten us? How can a little girl who broke the rules of the base be so charming? Ah Feng, who had been sent to the base by the Li family for a long time, was one of the managers in the base hall. Hearing this, he walked to the window, took a look, and then silently looked back at the elders who had been angry because of this matter. Actually, Ah Feng said, if you ignore Feng Ling's gender, she is indeed a very outstanding member of the base. Her usual style is indeed different from what I saw today. She can't hold her liquor well, so she rarely drinks. Even if she occasionally gathers with her friends in the base, she won't drink more than 2 glasses at most. She has good self-awareness. Unfortunately, she's a girl. After saying a few words, Ah Feng suddenly saw the elder's unkind expression and immediately changed the second half of his sentence. He then sighed and smiled. There's nothing we can do. After all, she violated the most basic principle of the base, especially between her and Boss Li. Grandfather Li suddenly slammed his walking stick on the ground and looked at Ah Feng coldly. So you've long seen that Nan Heng is having an affair with this woman in the base? Why didn't you tell me earlier? If Mingzhu hadn't noticed something was wrong, we would have been kept in the dark. If Nan Heng hadn't been guarding the Li family's ancestral hall and couldn't come out, I'm afraid this woman named Feng Ling wouldn't have been able to chase us away. Ah Feng paused. Ah Feng paused. Before this, we really didn't expect that she was a woman. We just thought that she was a slightly good-looking young man. In addition, she has always been excellent in all kinds of tests and is agile. Many tall and strong men can't beat her, which makes it even more difficult for us to doubt her. Moreover, she is in the sniper team and is closer to Boss Li. At first, we didn't think much of it, but later, we vaguely felt that Boss Li was indeed taking too much care of her. Combined with the truth today, I said so, but we really didn't find it before. That's enough. Stop twisting words and forcing logic. He's already gone. You can only push all the blame away. Li Junyin turned to look at the people outside and said coldly, if they want to stand, let them stand outside. Which member of the base hasn't been trained in rain and snow? It's fine for them to stand for a few hours. They want to threaten us in this way and demonstrate the rules and customs of the base. Do you think that the 10 of them can change the rules and customs of the base by standing there in the snow and rain for a few hours? What a fantasy! Ah Feng was silent for a moment and didn't say much. He just turned back and said to the people at the door, "Persuade them to go back. It's useless no matter how long they stand. Why bother to let elderly continue to be angry because of Feng Ling? It's not good for either side. Go and ask them to go back first. Brother Feng, we've talked to them just now but they won't leave. Their request is not unreasonable. They just hope that you can allow them to drive out now. If I'm not wrong, they should just want to send Feng Ling away. Think about Feng Ling's situation just now. Can he walk so far? If he continues like this, he may die. Brother Feng, we've talked to them just now, but they won't leave." Ah Feng frowned and was about to speak when Li Junyan had already approached. He stood by the side and heard their conversation. He said expressionlessly, "Driving the base's car to send a woman who has been cheating in the base for 4 or 5 years. Let's see who dares to go." Elderly. Grandfatherly immediately glanced at the person who was about to speak indifferently, and the other party immediately shut his mouth and did not dare to say another word. Ah Feng sighed. He had been in the Li family for so long and knew how difficult it was to persuade the stubborn elders of the Li family. He also knew that what the Li family cared about was not because Feng Ling was a woman, but because when Feng Mingzhu reported Feng Ling to them, they found out that Feng Ling had lived in Li Nanheng's apartment for a long time. They often went in and out of the apartment together at night. This was the real reason why they wanted Feng Ling to leave the base. It was a pity that Feng Ling was such a good seedling. He was clearly the best member of the sniper team. Chapter 1001. The Li Family, the Ancestral Hall. The Ancestral Hall was peaceful and quiet, and Li Nanheng hadn't experienced such a quiet and idle feeling for a long time. He had promised the Feng family that after marrying the second miss, he would bring the second miss to the Ancestral Hall of the Li family and become the granddaughter-in-law of the Li family. 3 days after the marriage, he would accompany the little girl who died in the sea at the age of 1 in the Ancestral Hall. Before, he had never learned too much about the second miss of the Feng family. It was not until the day before he got married that he learned everything from Grandma Feng. She died innocently in the sea at the age of 1. She was indeed a pitiful child. It could be imagined how adorable the second miss of the Feng family was when she was 1 year old. Even after 17 years, the entire Feng family had not forgotten her and refused to forget her. Li Nanheng sat on the straw mat in the Ancestral Hall and looked at the 2 baby clothes brought over by the Feng family. They were pink and small. Although they were carefully put away, they were still a little yellow because of the accumulation of years. Before he married the second miss, he had never considered the situation of others, whether it was children, adults, women or girls. Everything had nothing to do with him. Perhaps it was only because of the sudden pressure of responsibility that he felt for a child who had passed away at the age of 1. He actually had such an inexplicable compassion for a child who had passed away at the age of 1. For such a child, it was rare for him to calm down and be a vegetarian for 3 days in the Ancestral Hall of the Li family, which he had been too lazy to enter since he was a child. He could also not touch his mobile phone or any electronic products, and just accompany this little girl, who had no fate with the world. Li Nanheng got up, stood beside the 2 little clothes, picked up the fruit plate next to him, stood there, and slowly peeled an apple. Then he cut it into small pieces that could only fit a baby's mouth, and put them on the plate. Then he stared at the apple pieces on the plate, and suddenly sighed with a smile. He didn't know whether a 1-year-old child could eat apples. Maybe she could eat it, maybe she couldn't eat it. Or should he mash it into mud? What on earth could a child eat? Just when Li Nanheng stood there pondering whether to put 2 bottles of milk here, someone came in from outside. It was Li Jin's, the granddaughter of the 3rd elder of the Li family. Big brother. Before Li Jin's entered the door, he glanced outside, and then walked into the Ancestral Hall of the Li family. Li Nanheng stood still and looked back at her. Yes. Li Jin's walked in, and pulled up the bottom of her long blouse. Then she took out a black cell phone from the back pocket of her jeans, and handed it to him. Seeing that she had brought his cell phone, Li Nanheng frowned and suddenly smiled. I didn't dote on you for nothing. You even stole my cell phone for me. After Li Jin's handed the phone to him, he took a step back. In case the surveillance cameras in the ancestral hall would capture too much content and attract the attention of the elders. He just walked around the ancestral hall casually and said disapprovingly, "This ancestral hall has existed for many years. Although there are many Chinese in Los Angeles, only the Li family can set up an ancestral hall at home. The elders of our family are really stubborn. Why do they still have an ancestral hall in this era? One is stubborn, and all four of them are stubborn. They are really brothers." Li Nanheng didn't care. He pressed the power button and said lightly, "There's nothing wrong with continuing the ancestral hall. We young people are not interested in it. Although the four of them are old, they also have their own things. It's rare to hear you understand them so well." Li Jin's turned to look at him. "Your marriage is really strange. What were you thinking at the beginning? Why didn't you marry Feng Mingzhu, a beautiful woman? Why did you marry a child who died at the age of 1? Do you want to bring all kinds of toys to her as a greeting gift?" Li Nanheng didn't answer, but looked down at the cell phone with a black screen. "Before you sent the cell phone to me, didn't you think of charging it for me, or bringing the charger with it?" "Ah, I forgot." Seeing the cell phone in his hand was not turned on, Li Jins walked over in surprise, picked it up and looked at it saying, "But you can't blame me. If your cell phone hadn't been vibrating in the drawer, I wouldn't have heard it, and wouldn't have taken it out. Those calls seem to be from the people of 11 base, and many of the numbers are prefixes of the members of 11 base. Let me tell you, you'd better be content. The four elders suddenly went out this morning. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the chance to steal the cell phone for you." Li Nanheng took a look at her. "All four of them went out?" "Yes. I don't know what happened to the grandpas recently. Just a few days before your wedding, Miss Feng, that is Feng Mingzhu, came to the Li family several times, but I don't know what she said to the grandpas. But I can see that they are not in a good mood recently, especially when they look at you sometimes. Haven't you noticed? They seem to be very dissatisfied with something. So I know they will definitely try their best to trick you." Sure enough, I guessed right. Not only did they marry the cenotaph, but they also made you stay here for 3 days, and can't use your cell phone. This is really unreasonable. Li Nanheng. "Yes, you are the smartest. I'll send you the charger in a while. I just came back from the Li family today. Speaking of the Li family's company, I finally know why you are too lazy to take over it. There are so many things to do that you don't even have time to relax. If I were you, I would rather live a more exciting life in 11 base than deal with those cunning foxes in the business circle." Li Nanheng snorted and casually turned the cell phone in his hand. "Don't talk nonsense. Go get the charger." "I'll go get it now. What will you give me?" "I'll ask your sister Li Lin to help you manage the company for a while, and let you and your new boyfriend go on vacation around the world for a month. You know, I'm the only one who can ask Li Lin. She won't give face to anyone else." Li Jins raised her eyebrows. "Deal." 10 minutes later, Li Jins hurriedly walked into the Li family's ancestral hall and brought him the cell phone charger. Li Nanheng glanced at the 2 small clothes and the fruit plate next to him, walked to the other side, connected the cell phone to the power, and finally turned on the cell phone. "It's 2019. Happy New Year, dear. This is the first time we celebrate the new year together." Chapter 1002. Within a minute after the phone was turned on, countless text messages popped up. Before Li Nanheng had time to see where these text messages came from, his eyes were fixed on one of them. "Boss, answer the phone. Something happened to Feng Ling." Li Nanheng's eyes paused on those words. He didn't pay attention to any of the messages that passed by. He slid open the phone screen and was about to call the base. However, before he dialed the number, Kay called him. Kay didn't expect that boss would suddenly turn on the phone. At the moment when the phone was connected, he almost burst into tears. "Boss, when can you come back?" "Come back to find Feng Ling. She was driven out of the base by the 4 elders." "Driven out of the base? What do you mean?" Li Nanheng's eyes suddenly turned cold, and some bad premonition clearly and obviously surged in his heart. "I don't know who reported Feng Ling's gender to the elders, But the elders suddenly came to the base today and asked people to carry all of Feng Ling's things out and throw them all over the ground. The things she used to cover herself, and some things that only girls could use, were seen by everyone. Kay said anxiously, "Also, Feng Ling knows about your marriage. Last night, she must have drunk a lot of wine alone, but I don't know why she has a fever. When I touched her hand, I felt that it was very hot. But boss, you know Feng Ling's temper. If she wants to leave, none of us can stop her. It's raining and snowing outside. It's very cold. She can't go far if she goes out alone with her suitcase. Now the gate of the base has been locked down, and we can't get out. I don't know how Feng Ling is now, but when we looked at her before, I felt that she was in a bad state." Kay said anxiously, "Also, Feng Ling knows about your marriage. Last night, she drank a lot of wine alone, but I don't know why she has a fever." Li Nanheng suddenly turned his eyes to Li Jintz, who was standing next to him. "She just said that the elders suddenly went out together this morning. It turned out that this was what they planned to do when they forced him to stay in the ancestral hall for 3 days." Li Nanheng put down his cell phone and turned to walk out without saying a word. "Hey, what are you going to do?" Li Jintz looked at him in surprise. "Didn't we agree to stay here for 3 days? If you go out now, Grandpa will." However, the man seemed not to hear her and walked out quickly without looking back. Li Jintz felt strange and didn't know what happened. She could only feel that Li Nanheng's expression was murderous. She quickly followed him out, only to see that Li Nanheng went to the parking lot in the front yard of the Li's house, opened the door, and got in the car. The black Hummer immediately drove out with a terrible engine sound, raising a cloud of dust on the ground. Los Angeles, Chingla Villa. The short-haired girl on the bed had been unconscious for a few hours. The spot on the back of her hand where the needle was inserted had turned blue. She was still in a deep sleep and had not woken up yet. She frowned because of the headache and cold feeling all over her body, turned to look at the woman on the bed, and said hoarsely, "Miss Wen?" She frowned faintly because of the headache and the alternating hot and cold feeling all over her body. She turned to look at the woman beside the bed and said hoarsely, "Miss Wen." When Leching looked at her by the bed, seeing her wake up, she smiled. "Do you feel better?" Feng Ling looked at her for a while, looked around, and finally slowly raised her hand, put it on the back of her hand, and asked softly, "Where am I? Why are you here?" "It's rare for me to take a vacation in the hospital. I wanted to go to 11 base to find my brother, but I didn't expect to see you lying on the ground on the way," When Leching said as she sat down on the bed, grabbed her hand and touched it. "It's still very hot. How did you become like this? When I picked you up and brought you back to the car, your body was so hot that an egg could be cooked. There's also a strong smell of alcohol on your body, and there are skin wounds on your arms and legs. What happened? Why did you faint on the way?" Hearing the words 11 base, the confusion in Feng Ling's eyes instantly turned cold. She closed her eyes and was about to take her hand out of her hand, when Wen Leching held her hand and said, "I know you are very weak and need to rest now. This is my residence. I often lived here when I was very young. Except for 2 servants, no one will come here. You can rest here." Feng Ling didn't want to trouble others, but it seemed impossible for her to show off now, so she could only say, "Thank you, Miss Wen." Wen Leching raised her eyebrows and looked at her, as if she couldn't cheer up no matter what she said. "Feng Ling, are you still not willing to tell me the truth?" "What truth?" "When I brought you back, your clothes were cold and wet. I just wanted to help you change your clothes, but..." When she said this, she pointed to the door of the bathroom. Feng Ling turned around and saw that her dirty clothes and chest wrapping cloth were stacked on the shelf. The fact that she was a woman had been spread in 11 base today. After leaving the base, she really had nothing to hide. She nodded lightly. "Yes, I'm a woman." Seeing her suddenly being so frank, Wen Leching looked at her in surprise. "How old are you? You are so young. But you pretended to be a man and lived in 11 base, and 11 base is so strict. How on earth did you do it? I heard they said that you are a very powerful man in the base, but you are a girl. It's really admirable." Feng Ling didn't expect that Wen Leching would praise the shameless thing that the Li brothers had just said to her as too admirable. She slowly raised her eyes and looked at Wen Leching, who looked gentle and fair, with long soft hair, and looked very kind when she smiled. She remembered that every time when Luching went to 11 base, it seemed that she was for Dr. One. She didn't know much about the relationship between men and women, or the relationship between brother and sister. Although she didn't know what was going on, she knew that if she were a man, she would definitely like a woman like Wen Luching. Not like herself, who had no character, no background, no sense of existence, and no femininity. "I'm sorry, I deceived all of you," Feng Ling said softly. Wen Luching smiled. "I believe you, but you don't have to apologize. Do you think I didn't see the little ambiguous relationship between you and Li Nanheng when I was in the base? Although Nanheng didn't say anything, I can see that the relationship between you two is not so simple." Chapter 1003. Feng Ling didn't answer her, but just looked at the back of her hand again. Wen Luching didn't know that she just didn't want to mention Li Nanheng. She patted the back of her hand gently. "Your fever was too serious. I was afraid that it would be too late to feed you medicine, so I gave you an injection. In fact, in the United States, if it's not a particularly serious disease, we don't advocate injections. I can see how high your fever was." With that, Wen Luching said, "The temperature I measured just now is still a little hot, but at least it won't burn you. Just stay here and take a good rest. If you have anything to say to 11 base, I'll help you pass a message to them." "There's nothing to say. I don't belong to 11 base anymore," Feng Ling said in a low voice. Wen Luching didn't understand what she meant, and then she thought of Feng Ling's suitcase and her lying on the side of the road in embarrassment. She looked at her in surprise. "You. 11 base doesn't accept women. My secret has been discovered," Feng Ling answered concisely. "So what? Does it matter if you are a man or a woman? You are a good member of the base. Many men are not as good as you. Why do they?" Wen Luching's face was full of displeasure. "I'll call my brother and ask him what happened. Even if someone wants you to leave, will Li Nanheng agree to let you go?" Feng Ling closed her eyes and didn't answer. Seeing that she didn't speak and her face was so bad, Wen Luching didn't ask anymore and raised her hand to help her pull up the quilt. "Okay, let's talk about it when you are better. It's raining and snowing heavily today, and it's cold now. I guess the road back to 11 base is deserted and will be frozen. Even if I take you back now, we can't drive back. The icy road is too dangerous. Have a good sleep first. As I said, there are no outsiders here. You don't have to feel any pressure. Just rest." Feng Ling closed her eyes and nodded slightly. "Okay." Wen Luching got up from the bed, closed the window, and turned to walk out of the room. The room returned to silence. Feng Ling opened her eyes and looked at the elegant room. She looked at the crystal lights on the beautiful ceiling for a long time, and then slowly closed her eyes. With a bang, the door of the base hall was suddenly kicked open. Hearing the noise, Ah Feng suddenly walked out from behind. As soon as he came out, he saw Li Nanheng, who was supposed to be in the ancestral hall of the Li family, walking in with a cold expression. Nanheng, seeing his expression, he knew that he knew everything. "Calm down. Where is Feng Ling?" Li Nanheng drove all the way in, slammed the car door, and entered the base hall. He looked around but didn't see the elders, and his face became colder. "I'm not here. Did you drive her away? It's not what you think. The elders received a report and suspected that Feng Ling is a woman. Today, they came to the base to investigate, but they didn't expect that Feng Ling was not in a good state last night. This morning, she didn't have the strength to fight against us, so she was brought here and threw out all her things. When she was interrogated, she admitted it herself. Where are the elders?" Li Nanheng couldn't imagine the scene of Feng Ling being brought out, thrown on the ground, and criticized by everyone. He clenched his fists and his knuckles had turned white. "In the sniper team, they said they will throw away all the things in the room where Feng Ling lived and lock the door completely." Li Nanheng turned and walked out, and Ah Feng followed him out. "Nanheng, the elders are angry. I know you are very angry now, but at this time, the key is not what the elders think, but how Feng Ling will live. Now even if you can bring her back to the base, I'm afraid she will not come back." Li Nanhing's footsteps suddenly stopped. Kay said that Feng Ling had already known the news of his marriage. Feng Ling drank a lot of wine the night before. Feng Ling was driven out of the base by the Li family. Feng Ling was gone. Feng Ling, Feng Ling, Feng Ling. In his life, Li Nanhing had never been so entangled in his heart because of a person's name. He had never felt such pain, as though he was being torn apart. He knew Feng Ling's temper very well. If she knew that he was married, she would not forgive him no matter what the reason was. Her temper was never easy for him to control. Once she was hurt and out of his control, he would never be able to have her again. Li Nanhing walked out of the base hall with a sullen face and went straight to the sniper team. When he arrived at the sniper team, the new drill master saw him and was about to come up to speak to him in surprise. But Li Nanhing walked in expressionlessly and went straight into the building where he and Feng Ling lived. He quickly walked to the floor where he and Feng Ling lived, and sure enough, he saw several members holding a few wooden boards outside Feng Ling's room. It seemed that it was not enough to lock the door, and they even wanted to seal it with wooden boards. What was this? Did they treat Feng Ling as a plague that was driven out? After she left, they still wanted to seal everything related to her. What are you doing? The man's cold voice suddenly came. The two people who were about to nail the wooden boards on the door looked back and saw him. They were so scared that they hurriedly put the boards on the ground, turned to him and bowed. Boss, Mr. Li asked us to do this. It has nothing to do with me. Li Nanhing kicked the wooden boards on the ground away, and then raised his foot, and kicked the two people aside. Get out! Mr. Li had just given them an order, and was not here. Now it was Boss Li standing here. The two people didn't dare to say anything. They were so scared that they peed their pants and walked out, not daring to look back. Li Nanhing stepped forward to open the door, only to find that the door was indeed locked. It was not that he couldn't break in. He could just kick the door open. But thinking that Feng Ling would come back sooner or later, he couldn't welcome her with a broken door. So he turned into his room with a cold face, opened the window, and jumped over from the balcony. As soon as he got over, he saw an empty bottle of wine on the balcony. Looking at the bottle of wine, Li Nanhing's movements paused for a moment, and he bent down to pick up the bottle, only to see that it was a whole bottle of 58% brandy. This degree of brandy was already considered a strong liquor. She was not a good drinker, and didn't even know how to drink. But she sat on the balcony alone, and drank a whole bottle. Chapter 1004. The man clenched the empty bottle in his hand so tightly that it almost broke in his palm. At this moment, his cell phone rang, and Li Nanhing picked it up. Boss, didn't you find Feng Ling when you returned to the base? After talking to you on the phone, we finally came out, but we couldn't find Feng Ling. With her condition today, she can't walk that far. It's at least 20 kilometers from the base to a place where she can get a taxi. She has a high fever, and it's snowing so heavily. It's impossible for her to walk out. Boss, when you returned to the base earlier, you didn't find Feng Ling either, right? Li Nanhing took the bottle into the window, looked at the mess on the ground, and said coldly, keep looking. Contact the Los Angeles Transportation Bureau, and get the surveillance videos along the way, and all the roads leading to the city. Okay. With boss's words, Kay was relieved. After hanging up the phone, he hurriedly went to contact someone. Li Nanhing put down his cell phone and walked into the bathroom, only to see that the bottles inside had been broken. Everything was either thrown away, dirted, or smashed. Nothing was left. Just like the little Feng Ling he had been carefully holding in his hand, she was suddenly thrown into hell from a high place within one day. He didn't even come back to save her in time. From dark to dawn, Li Nanhing walked out of the room and saw his grandfather, Li Zhenyan, who had been standing in the corridor with a walking stick. Looking at the blue stubble around Li Nanhing's chin, and the fact that he had been sitting in the room all night, Li Zhenyan was furious. When he walked over expressionlessly, he raised his cane and hit him hard on the back. Didn't I ask you to guard the cenotaph of second Miss Feng in the ancestral hall? Who allowed you to come out? You heartless, unjust, and unfilial thing. You really don't take my words seriously for a woman, do you? Li Nanheng didn't seem to feel any pain. Although he was hit on the back, his expression didn't change, and he didn't even frown. He just glanced at him coldly. If it weren't for the accident in the base, do you think I wouldn't have stayed in the ancestral hall for 3 days? Even if I'm heartless and unfilial, I've never denied what I promised, including the cenotaph that I promised to marry second Miss Feng. Even if I was unwilling, I still married her. If it weren't for the changes in the base, I would still be in the ancestral hall, not here. How dare you King argue with me? You know that Feng Ling is a woman, but you keep the secret and don't tell anyone. This is heartless. You don't respect a base member who has been by your side for many years, and even like her. This is unjust. You know that the Li family has always hated women, and you know that I can't let you marry someone like Feng Ling. But you hide such a woman in the base, and hold her in the palm of your hand every day. This is unfilial. I didn't directly blame you, but I just drove that woman out. But you left the little wife in the ancestral hall, and came to find Feng Ling. Do you think I will give you a chance to see her again? I tell you, Nanheng, don't even think about it in this life. Feng Ling can't marry our Li family, even after 3 years. You'd better give up as soon as possible. And let me tell you, I plan to give full control of 11 base to Feng. You'd better go back and take over the Li family. No matter how smart Li Jin's and Li Lin are, they are still not half as smart as you. You still put all your attention on the base, but you still made the Li family rise steadily. If you can focus on the Li family business, then the Li family. I won't go back. Give up. Li Nanheng's face was cold as he threw down the words and left. Mr. Li's face instantly turned livid, and he suddenly turned his eyes to Li Nanheng's cold back. Although Li Nanheng usually didn't completely listen to the arrangements of the elders at home, at least he was just a little unruly and a little naughty, and would never refuse in such a ruthless tone. She was just a tomboy who was not even 18 years old. Why did he care so much about her? Mr. Li angrily hit his crutch hard on the ground. Nanheng, stop. However, the man who had gone far had no intention of stopping. Li Nanheng, are you going to sever ties with our Li family because of that tomboy named Feng Ling? Li Nanheng's footsteps slowed down a little, and then he stopped, and then in less than 2 seconds, without any response, he walked out. Mr. Li was so angry that his hand holding the crutch was trembling. This bastard! It was just dawn, and Kay and the others had already rushed back. Seeing Boss Li driving out, they hurriedly stopped the car, rolled down the window, and said, "Boss, only the road in the suburbs has surveillance cameras, and there are no surveillance cameras on other roads. We checked all the surveillance cameras all night, but there is no trace of Feng Ling. Have you checked other roads? It's very dark. I drove around, but didn't find her." Kay frowned. Li Nanheng didn't speak anymore, stepped hard on the accelerator, and drove the black Hummer out of the base. Outside the base, Li Nanheng dialed Feng Ling's cell phone number in the car, and drove the car to all the roads she could pass. The car drove to the left side of the community leading to the urban area, but there was no trace of Feng Ling. Her number had been dialed countless times, but her phone was always turned off. Where else could she go except to the urban area to find a place to settle down for the time being? There was not even a jungle nearby. She had lived outside for so many years. Even if she grew up in the jungle, it was impossible for her to go back to the jungle. It was impossible for her to adapt to that kind of life. Li Nanheng turned the car around and drove to the urban area with a gloomy face. The Li family. Qin Xiu and Mrs. Li got out of the car in front of the Li family, and Qin Xiu said unhappily when she got out of the car behind them, "Since you've already married my sister's cenotaph, what are you thinking about? This is only the 3rd day of the nominal marriage, and you want to come and see it? It's just the clothes of 2 babies. At most, they will be placed in the ancestral hall. What else can you do? Do you have to be so worried?" Qin Xiu didn't speak, but just glanced at Mrs. Li. Mrs. Li also didn't speak. A few days ago, she found that the round jade bracelet she had been carrying with her all year round was missing, and she was upset for a long time. After Li Nanheng married Li Nanheng, she felt even more uneasy, so she just wanted to come and see it. Li Jin's happened to come out at this time. Seeing them, She came up and said politely, Mrs. Feng, Mrs. Li, Miss Feng. Are you here to see Mr. Li? Is Nanhing here? Qin Xiu asked. He should have gone to the base. Mrs. Li frowned. He went to the base as soon as he got married? Didn't he say that he would stay in the ancestral hall for a few days? Feng Mingzhu sneered. I guess he suddenly found that the person named Feng Ling in their base is actually a woman. The news that a woman has been disguised as a man in the base for too long has caused a sensation. So he must go back to deal with it. Li Jin's didn't know much about the situation, but was surprised to hear this. Mrs. Li and Qin Xiu's expressions instantly trembled. The two of them suddenly turned to look at Feng Mingzhu. Feng Ling was a woman. Chapter 1005. Mingzhu, what did you just say? That young man named Feng Ling is a woman? Qin Xiu looked at her in surprise. Feng Mingzhu could understand her mother's surprise, but she didn't understand why her mother looked so surprised. She just glanced at her mother. She's a woman. I don't know why she disguised as a man to sneak into 11 base. I guess she's born to like places with more men. Qin Xiu's eyes trembled, and Feng Ling's face, which was exactly the same as hers when she was young, flashed in her mind, and then she turned to look at her mother. Madame Dowager pressed her hand on Qin Xiu's arm. After a long silence, she said, Let's go to the ancestral hall and have a look. Everything could only be guessed, and the age didn't seem to match. What if her hope was dashed again? In the few years after second brother fell into the sea, the Feng family went to many orphanages. Anyone who looked like second brother was thought to be a miracle. They thought it was that poor child, but time and time again they all failed. Second brother had been gone for 17 years. If Feng Ling, who claimed to be 17 years old, was really second brother, she should be 18 years old. If the age didn't match, no matter how many coincidences there were, it was useless. But that child really looked like second brother. If she was a girl, it would be even better. Madame Dowager and Qin Xiu knew each other well. There were many things that couldn't be said before they were confirmed. Madame Dowager, Mrs. Feng, they are not here today. Let's go to the ancestral hall in a few days. The ceremony has just been held. It's too early for you to come. Li Jins didn't know what happened, so it was not convenient for the Feng family to go in at this time. In particular, Miss Feng Mingzhu seemed to be unhappy about something. Listening to their words, there should be some strange dispute. Of course, the Li family would never get involved in these disputes, so the best way was to stay away from them and not let them get close. We're just going to take a look at second brother's cenotaph, the old madam said softly. Madam, the clothes second miss left behind are not just these 2 years. You've only brought 2 of them here and kept the rest with you. It's only been 2 years, and you've only left for 2 or 3 days. Do you really have to enter the Li family's ancestral hall? Madam, after all, you're from the same generation as the Li family's grandfathers. You should know that people who are not members of the Li family are not allowed to enter the ancestral hall. Besides, the Li family's patriarchal ideology has always been very serious. Even I, the granddaughter of third Master Li, have to repeatedly request and perform a ceremony to enter the ancestral hall. You, Mrs. Feng, and Miss Feng, this is not appropriate. Madame Dowager frowned, but didn't insist on walking inside. Forget it. Since the Li family has so many rules, I won't break them. When will Nanheng come back? I'm not sure. If you guys are too anxious, I'll give him a call now. But when I called him just now, he didn't answer. Then don't bother looking for him. Now that he has returned to the base, there must be something important. Madame Dowager skipped the topic about Feng Ling in the base, winked at Qin Xiu, and turned back to the car. Feng Mingzhu turned to look at the front door of the Li family's villa. She thought that she should have married into this place openly, but in the end, she still missed everything she wanted. She lowered her eyes, didn't say anything more, and got into the car. Seeing that the Feng family's car had left, Li Jin slowly breathed out. Really? They all suddenly left in one day, leaving her to clean up the mess at home. All the roads in the suburbs of Los Angeles were seriously frozen. Even the best driver couldn't completely control the stability of the car, on such an uncontrolled icy road. The tires of the black Hummer were very stable, but they still skidded on the ice countless times. The car drove very fast, and on the road to the city, the car drifted because of the speed. Seeing that the car was out of control, Li Nanheng looked at the empty road ahead and the surrounding deserted fields, and his hands left the steering wheel. In the end, with a bang, the tall black Hummer hit the roadside fence, broke through the fence, and stopped hard in the barren field. And then the engine went out with a puff. Li Nanheng's chest was hit hard by the steering wheel, but he didn't even frown. When the car stopped, he sat silently in the driver's seat, looking at everything outside. His eyes were empty, and he slowly raised his hand hanging on his thigh, only to catch a mass of air. Last night, he sat in Feng Ling's room all night. He wanted to feel her temperature but couldn't. Only then did he realize that she hadn't left anything behind for so long. Once she disappeared, even if he had the ability, he might not be able to find her. Qingla Villa. After 2 days of rest, Feng Ling just caught a cold, had a fever, and had a hangover. After the fever subsided, she was fine and could get out of bed and walk around. When Lecheng did give her a good rest space, except for checking her body and eating time, she let her rest alone in the room most of the time. Feng Ling felt much better today. She went to take a simple shower, put on a set of light-colored sportswear given to her by Wen Lecheng, and went to open her 2 suitcases. Most of the things in the suitcases could no longer be used or worn. After all, she walked outside in the sleet, and even the best suitcases have been soaked in water. Because the people here were very polite and wouldn't casually rummage through her things, the things in the suitcases were soaked in water for more than 2 days, and could no longer be used. She packed up the things inside, and prepared to throw them away, and noticed that her cell phone had been placed in this ball of clothes for a long time. Li Nanheng accompanied her to buy this cell phone, and it had been used for a long time. Once he offered to help her change it again, but she refused. At that time, she inexplicably liked the things he chose for her. She didn't know what kind of emotion it was. She liked it, was reluctant to throw it away, and wanted to keep using it. Today, she finally understood what kind of emotion it was. So there was no need to keep this cell phone. The girl squatting by the suitcases did not hesitate to throw the cell phone into the trash can, including all the other things that could no longer be worn or used, and threw them out. Chapter 1006. At the bottom of the other suitcase there was something. Feng Ling was about to put the suitcase away, when she suddenly remembered the thing there. She pulled open the curtain at the bottom, and took out the jade pendant that had been placed inside. She had been wearing this jade pendant since she was a child. She could throw other things away, but not this one. She sat on the ground for a while, and thought of the jade bracelet she picked up at the banquet last time. But she didn't have time to pay much attention to it after returning to the base. It seemed that she had stuffed it into the suitcase after coming back. Which suitcase? At that time, outside the base hall, all the things that fell on the ground were picked up, and nothing was left, so it couldn't be lost. She reached out to the trash can and took out all the clothes that had been thrown away. She looked through them one by one, until the round jade bracelet fell out of the pocket of one of the clothes. Feng Ling held the jade pendant in one hand, and the jade bracelet in the other. She looked at them for a while, then overlapped the 2 things in front of her eyes, and finally stuck them together. She pressed her fingers gently. The jade pendant and the jade bracelet fit perfectly in the middle of the jade bracelet, as if they were one. Looking at the 2 things that suddenly merged into one in her hands, Feng Ling, who was squatting by the trash can, suddenly sat on the ground. At this time, the old lady's excited expression every time she looked at her, and Mrs. Feng, Qin Xiu, occasionally fell into a trance when she looked at her. She didn't know much about the Feng family. She always thought that the Feng family only had one daughter, Feng Mingzhu, but she seemed to forget when it was. From the conversation between the mother and daughter, it seemed that Qin Xiu had been thinking about another daughter who had died. Thinking of this, her mind suddenly became clear. At that time, the old lady and Qin Xiu stared at her face, asked her if she was a man or a woman, and asked her age. After hearing that she was a man, the two of them were disappointed, and when they heard her age, they were even more disappointed. But her gender was fake, and she was not sure about her age. Could she be the daughter that the Feng family thought was dead? But no matter whether she was or not, the only living member of the Feng family was Feng Mingzhu. She was the eldest daughter of the Feng family. Li Nanheng would only marry Feng Mingzhu. What did this have to do with her own identity? If she could be the daughter of the Feng family, just because of this pair of jade pendants, did it mean that when she saw Li Nanheng again, she would have to call him brother-in-law? Heh, how ridiculous. Feng Ling indifferently put the jade pendant in her hand back into the suitcase. Facing the possibility that her identity was about to be revealed, and the so-called dead daughter they mentioned, it meant that she was not abandoned, but something must have happened. However, she realized that at this moment, she actually didn't want to pursue the truth of her origins, and she didn't want to find her parents or her family. So what if she is? Moreover, Feng Mingzhu had always hated her. If she really appeared with the jade pendant, it would not be just one family that would be unhappy. A child raised by a wolf would never be welcomed anywhere. There was no trace of Feng Ling. It was as if he had vanished from the face of the earth. It was indeed difficult to find a person who had never contacted anyone outside. After she left, she didn't turn on her cell phone again, couldn't find the location of GS, and didn't use the money in her bank card. No one knew where she had appeared. Kay even contacted Xiao Fei and asked if he knew where Feng Ling had been recently, because Feng Ling didn't know anyone outside. But obviously, the result was the same. No one knew where she was. Li Nanheng's car was found in the wilderness that day, and then he sat in the car for a day and a night. The next day, the members of the base who came out to look for him found that Boss Li was unconscious in the car and rushed him to the hospital. Only then did they know that Li Nanheng hadn't eaten much since the day Li Nanheng got married. In the 2 days in the ancestral hall, he didn't eat anything. Because of Feng Ling's matter, he drove day and night without sleep, and the impact force when the car suddenly stopped in the wilderness, and the air conditioning in the car was not turned on all night. So Li Nanheng was unconscious in the car for a long time. Logically speaking, Xiao Fei had already left the base, and could no longer have any contact with the base. But he still drove back to the base because of Feng Ling's matter. He wanted to settle the score with Li Nanheng, but when he found Li Nanheng, he was still unconscious in the hospital, so he couldn't punch him. He just threw the English newspaper with the Feng and Li family's wedding on his bed, and turned to leave with a cold face. Only Wen Liqing knew that Feng Ling had left. But she promised Feng Ling that she wouldn't say anything. If Li Nanheng was not married, maybe she would be the peacemaker, and help him secretly pass the message. But the fact was just as Feng Ling left before she left. Li Nanheng was married. From the perspective of reason and emotion, there was no reason to disturb his life, and he was not qualified to disturb her future life. They were strangers in the future, and there was no need to meet again. When Feng Ling left, she left her card with more than 300,000 US dollars in deposit with Wen Liqing, and then took 50,000 yuan in cash from Wen Liqing's hand. This way, she didn't want them to find out where she had withdrawn the money, and her expenses were not big. This money was enough for her to live a good life, find a stable job, and stay away from everything in Los Angeles. Wen Liqing certainly wouldn't touch the card Feng Ling left, even if Feng Ling said she could use the money in it at any time. But Wen Liqing was not short of money. She could feel Feng Ling's sincerity, so she liked Feng Ling very much. She liked Feng Ling's sincerity when her feelings were strong, and her decisiveness when her feelings were fading away. She couldn't see people she shouldn't see, and she couldn't think about people she shouldn't think about. If she could understand this matter one day earlier, there wouldn't be those disputes and stories between her and her brother, and she wouldn't be so persistent. Feng Ling said that she especially envied a beautiful and gentle female doctor like her, who had a good family background, an excellent educational background, a good upbringing, and was gentle and kind to others. In fact, what Feng Ling didn't know was that people like Wen Liqing envied her decisiveness and freedom. In life, people who seemed to have everything on the surface, but what they had would become a burden, that couldn't be abandoned in the future. No one's hope could be let down. But Feng Ling was different. The only thing she had to do was not to let herself down. Chapter 1007. 2 years later. In the Chinese Martial Arts Hall on the first floor opposite the Polytechnic University in Boston, USA. Big news! Look! This year's National Close Combat Women's Champion is a contestant named Zero. She wears a fighting cap all the time, so we can't see her face. But look at her figure. She is obviously our cold-faced female coach. Let me see. Oh my god, isn't our coach called Ling? Isn't she the codename Zero? Is there even a need to look at the name? Look at the devilish figure in the tight-fitting black combat suit. And then think about the cold-faced beauty, who is obviously beautiful, but always keeps a straight face. They are completely the same person, right? My god. Our coach is the National Close Combat Champion in the United States. It's the women's team. What's wrong with the women's team? You haven't seen the video of the competition. The men's team is not as energetic as the women's team. Besides, with Coach Ling's skills and coldness, she can beat 10 men in front of her. She doesn't care about men or women, as long as she is our coach. Several trainees were sitting in the classroom and discussing. Suddenly, they heard a cold female voice. It's 3 o'clock. If you don't get out and make room for the next group of trainees. As soon as the trainees heard the voice, they all looked embarrassed and shivered. Sure enough, it was the champion with the mask in the magazine just now. They immediately found their respective positions with smiles on their faces, and then did the basic training movements in the class. While doing it, they glanced at the expressionless short-haired woman in front of the door from time to time. Tut! Coach Ling usually wore very loose and normal clothes, but several times when she appeared in some competition parties with other coaches, she wore a particularly cold black fighting suit, which was mostly tight. No matter how cold the clothes were, Coach Ling looked cold and sexy when she wore them. After all, no one had noticed it before. They didn't expect that she had such a good figure. She was really memorable at first sight. This time, they didn't expect that she actually participated in the National Close Combat Competition, at the suggestion of the head coach, and even won the championship. However, she kept a low profile and didn't mention anything. She usually didn't show her real name to others. When she participated in the competition, she even omitted it. She just used a code 0. That was not the main point. The main point was that the female coach they had always admired and worshipped was said to be under 20 years old. She was really too young. These students were all a few years older than her. Most of them had good grades or came from rich families, so they came to the American Institute of Technology to study. On average, they were 2 or 3 years older than her. However, these male students were all suppressed by her indifferent temper. One word from Coach Ling was enough to make them not dare to say a word. Otherwise, she would really hit him. This Chinese martial arts club was not small, but none of the other coaches, male or female, no matter how old they were, could beat her in one-on-one combat. Feng Ling walked past the students and looked at their training postures. She raised one of their arms and patted him hard on the back. What are you doing? Your back is hunched after not training for a few days. Straighten your back. Yes, the male student mischievously dragged out his voice, but when he met the instructor's gaze, he instantly pursed his lips and didn't dare to make a sound. After looking at him coldly for a while, Feng Ling withdrew her gaze and turned to the other side of the students. Her current name was Aling, also known as Zero. Zero meant that she had nothing and started over again. After leaving 11 Base 2 years ago, she left Los Angeles. Originally, she wanted to go further and go to other countries, but she found that she had not experienced enough since she was a child. She was used to the United States, and other places might not be suitable for her to survive. Later, she coincidentally came to Boston and entered this martial arts club as a coach. It took her half a year to adapt to life here, and another year to accept such a peaceful life. Every day, she dealt with these international students in their early 20s. Most of them came from good families and were proud and arrogant. They just wanted to find something to learn, but they had too much money to spend, so they had to find some business to kill time. At first, they didn't pay much attention to their studies, but it didn't take long for them to change their temperament. They didn't dare to miss a martial arts class, and didn't dare to make trouble during class. When she just walked to a student who had been learning with her for more than a year, the student suddenly turned his head to look at her, and asked in a low voice, "Sister Ling, I heard that the champion this time will have a bonus of 500,000 US dollars. Do you want to treat us to a meal?" Feng Ling paused, and suddenly turned to look at him. The student immediately turned his head back in fright, and continued to do the standard movements. Otherwise he would definitely be beaten. However, he was kicked in the back of his knee. Wrong posture. The student. "What did you call me?" Feng Ling looked at him coldly. "Sister Ling." After being kicked again, the student immediately said with a sad face, "Coach Ling." Hearing the noise, the others all held back their laughter. Otherwise, if anyone really laughed out loud, they would definitely be the next one to suffer. Seeing that he was obedient, Feng Ling turned to look at the next person with a cold face. After checking their postures one by one and adjusting them, she walked back to the front, looked back at them for 5 minutes, and then said, "How are you doing with the breakdown movement and the whole process of the shoulder throw that I taught you last time? Who thinks you did well? Come and fight with me." The students looked at each other. This was the rhythm of Coach Ling taking the initiative to ask for abuse. The group of people rubbed their palms and were about to step forward, but the one standing in the front was the first to rush up. However, the faster he rushed up, the faster he lost face. He originally thought that he could directly carry such a thin woman on his shoulder, and then throw her back to the ground, but all his movements were too loopy. Feng Ling just stretched out her hand casually, and the strength of the other party's hand disappeared. Instead, he overexerted himself and fell back to the ground. While everyone was holding back their laughter, Feng Ling clapped her hands and said calmly, "Next." Another one came up, and the result was the same. He wanted to throw the instructor down with brute force, but every time, he was the first to fall to the ground. The next one went up and fell even harder. The tall and slender woman clearly had a beautiful face, but her hair was cut short, and she wore such a neutral dress. She wore loose martial arts suit and sportswear every day. She was so thin, but she was so good at martial arts that so many men couldn't beat her. He really wondered where she came from. She was a beautiful and handsome woman. Just watching her fight was a sight to behold. Chapter 1008. Who else wants to fight? I think you're all very confident. Come and have a try. Feng Ling looked at the students who got up from the ground, and turned to look at the others. This time, the group of people didn't dare to move. After hesitating for a long time, another student came out. Everyone looked at him. It was Chun Beiqing, who always took the opportunity to show his presence in front of the coach. It was said that his family ran a bank in Boston. He was definitely a rich man. He studied business management at Harvard, and was about to graduate, but he had been chasing after Drill Master Ling for a whole year. However, this year, he was completely ignored by Drill Master Ling. She didn't give him any chance at all. She didn't even agree to treat him to a meal. TSK, is Beiqing asking for a beating? Since it didn't work to treat him to a date, did he want to be beaten until he was half disabled? Feng Ling looked at him calmly and coldly. Classmate Chen, are you sure? Chun Beiqing was 23 years old and studied at Harvard University, which was very close to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston. He had not graduated from his senior year, but had already received a master's degree in business management. He was a very fair and gentle boy, and he had a deeper relationship with Feng Ling than others. The reason was that when Feng Ling first came here to work, Chun Beiqing was kidnapped by a group of gangsters here, because of an accident in his family's bank. Feng Ling passed by the parking lot outside Harvard at that time, and noticed that those people were sneaking towards the white car. Based on her sensitivity to these gangsters, it was not difficult for her to see what they wanted to do. She recognized the license plate number of the white luxury car. It was the car of Chun Beiqing, who had just come to the martial arts club to learn some kung fu. So she was a little cautious. When those people were about to rob Chun Beiqing's car, she quickly drove past them, stopped the car next to Chun Beiqing's car, rolled down the window, and winked at Chun Beiqing, who hadn't noticed the danger. Chun Beiqing saw those people behind through the rearview mirror, immediately backed up with her, accelerated, knocked away those people walking behind the parking lot, and then drove away at a high speed. On the same day, they also launched an extreme car chase on a nearby road. Those gangsters were not so easy to get rid of. Although Chun Beiqing didn't have any kung fu skills, he was good at driving. Under the hint of Feng Ling's eyes, he hesitated at first because he couldn't leave her alone. Later, seeing that she seemed to be fine, he asked her to stop the car in the middle of the road to block those gangsters. And he drove away quickly. They were just a few gangsters, so it was impossible for them to catch up with Feng Ling. When the police and Chun Beiqing arrived, those gangsters had been lying on the ground with bruises all over their faces. They didn't even have time to take out the guns in their pockets before they were thrown aside by Feng Ling. It was just a case of kidnapping and revenge by a rich family. After understanding the situation, the police took the gangsters away. After Chun Beiqing communicated with the police, he looked back and saw that Feng Ling had turned to get into the car and was about to leave. But before she drove away, he suddenly opened the door of the passenger seat and sat in. Feng Ling looked at him strangely. "What's up? Why do you want to help me?" he asked. Feng Ling fastened her seatbelt and said calmly, "Didn't you just register at our martial arts club? I have some impression of you, so I helped you when I saw you. It's not a big deal. Are you going to help me or not? Do you know how difficult it is to deal with these people? I'm not familiar with you. If something happens and I don't admit it, or take responsibility, what will you do?" Feng Ling sneered. "Little boy, you wouldn't care about this kind of thing if you didn't have full confidence. The dangerous people I've faced are much more ruthless than these gangsters. These people won't hurt me, and I don't need you to take responsibility for me. Get out of the car. I'm going back." Chun Beiqing raised his eyebrows, looked at her, and suddenly smiled. "Little boy, how old are you?" Feng Ling. Although she didn't know how old he was, most of the students who studied in Harvard were over 20 years old. In short, they were all older than her. Feng Ling was expressionless. 25. Chun Beiqing raised his eyebrows. "You don't look like me. Don't worry about it. Get out of the car. I still have something to do. You're out of danger. Go do what you need to do." Seeing that she was getting impatient, Chun Beiqing didn't say more. He just opened the door with a smile and said, "I just want to go to the martial arts club to kill time. But now I have changed my mind. From today on, I will go to every class you teach. I will never be absent." Feng Ling ignored him. When he got out of the car, she closed the door and drove away. This matter was just a very small matter to her. She had experienced too many different kinds of fighting scenes. She just casually saved a student, so she didn't take it seriously. However, as he said, Chun Beiqing would definitely come to the 3 classes every week on time. In the first few months, he just came to class on time. But one day, he suddenly brought her a bouquet of roses every time he came to class. Feng Ling refused every time, so he simply asked someone to put the flowers on her desk, and then came to class without saying a word. As time passed, Feng Ling was used to his stubbornness. Most importantly, he was stubborn under silence. He wouldn't pester her with words, nor would he do anything. It was just a bouquet of flowers. It was to tell everyone that he liked her, and that he was pursuing her. However, he wouldn't say or do anything to annoy her, so she kept rejecting him. From the moment the flowers were sent to the table, to the door, and then directly into the trash can, he still delivered them without hesitation. After a long time, she was too lazy to pay attention to him. Anyway, it had nothing to do with her whether the flowers withered or not. Only the cleaning auntie who came to clean the office every day would say excitedly, "Oh, there are new flowers again? Our vases are almost full. The ones from last time are still fresh. It seems that we need to buy 2 more vases." Occasionally, he offered to treat her to dinner, but she didn't respond to him. She also didn't respond to him when he invited her to a movie. Feng Ling didn't take it seriously, and Chen Beiqing didn't say much. Besides, those were all things outside of class. In class, he was so obedient that she couldn't find fault with him. Her classmate Chen, are you sure? Didn't make Chen Beiqing's expression change too much. He just smiled and stretched out his hand to make a gesture of invitation. Chapter 1009. In an instant, there were whistles all around, and everyone was ready to watch the show. They just wanted to see how Chen Beiqing was beaten to the ground by Coach Feng Ling, just glanced at him, and took a step back to make room for him. Let's start. Chen Beiqing stepped forward. His movements were clean and neat, which was the standard posture of a good student. He stretched out his long arm and grabbed Feng Ling's arm. Just as Feng Ling was trying to find a loophole in his movements, he suddenly pulled her in front of him. Feng Ling instantly raised her eyes to look at him, and was about to push him away when he moved his hand forward, and suddenly clasped it on her left shoulder. When her expression suddenly changed, he abruptly lifted her onto his shoulder. Under everyone's shocked gaze, he placed her on his shoulder for about 10 seconds. He deliberately did not let Feng Ling struggle, and spun several times on the spot, before throwing her back onto the soft cushion on the ground. The cushion was soft, so it didn't matter if she fell down, but at the same time, Chen Beiqing regretted it. Afraid that she would be hurt, he turned back and wanted to pull her up, but Feng Ling kicked him away in anger. Just as they were arguing and tearing each other apart, her movements became unsteady. His movements also became unsteady, and he suddenly fell down, pressing on top of her. Seeing the cold-faced female coach was pushed down on the spot, the surrounding people whistled even more, accompanied by all kinds of exclamations. Chen Beiqing was also taken aback for a moment. This was something he didn't expect. Feng Ling looked at him coldly. Get up. Chen Beiqing looked at her, a little moved and a little apologetic in his eyes. He got up and was about to pull her up, but Feng Ling didn't even look at his hand. She got up and asked coldly, "How do you know I have a wound on my shoulder? You haven't learned anything else, but you've learned to attack people's weaknesses? I noticed that every time I touched your left shoulder, you looked uncomfortable about 8 out of 10 times. Although I'm not sure if it's because of an old injury. With my ability as a beginner, if I want to throw you over my shoulder, I can only use your weakness. Although it's a bit despicable, it's still a method of close combat. This is what you said in class. Have you forgotten?" Chen Beiqing looked at her calmly. Feng Ling was speechless and didn't say anything more. She just raised her hand and motioned him to stand back. After this class, the head coach and the person in charge of the martial arts club arranged a celebration party for her to win the National Women's Close Combat Championship. Originally, Feng Ling wore a mask and didn't say her real name. She only reported a code name, but it didn't matter if she was recognized. However, she didn't plan to be high profile. It was just that she didn't have anything to do at that time. Every day, she just went to class and rested. Her life seemed to have lost its purpose and she was numb. The head coach saw her situation and asked her if she wanted to try to compete. In the past 2 months, she had been preparing for the competition and often trained by herself. Now that she won the championship, she didn't know what to do. The so-called celebration banquet was nothing more than a meal and a drink. She couldn't drink as much as usual, but she had been working outside for so long, so she had to drink a few glasses. After everyone had eaten and drank, she declined others who offered to send her home, and took a taxi back to her current residence in Boston. She only drank a few glasses of wine in the evening, but she was not drunk. At most, she smelled of alcohol, and was slightly tipsy. She walked into a student apartment building between Polytechnic University and Harvard University, got into the elevator, and pressed the number of the 15th floor. This was the place she had rented for the past 2 years. It was a small apartment of about 50 square meters. The environment here was not bad, and because it was rented to international students all year round, the price was relatively not too expensive. The living environment around it was not particularly luxurious. Life here was very peaceful. She got out of the elevator, took the key, opened the door, entered the door, turned on the light, threw down the bag, kicked off the shoes, and then sat on the sofa in a daze for a night. They all said that this was the life of ordinary people. Different from her life in the jungle, there was no excitement, no sense of achievement when searching for food. There was no physical training and devil training every day in 11 base, no sniper rifle, no sweat, and no life and death missions. It seemed that she finally lived like others, but lost her original self. As the night deepened, Feng Ling was not sleepy on the sofa. She got up and took a shower. After coming out, while drying her hair, she sat on the sofa and turned on the TV. She casually dialed a channel and parked it on an entertainment program. She didn't watch the content, but only heard the laughter of the audience. In this way, the entire quiet room became lively. After drying her hair, she put her hand on her shoulder. This was the place where she was bitten by a snake during the mission in the Snake Valley. Although it was said to be an old wound, it actually didn't hurt anymore. She didn't know why. It didn't hurt at all, and she didn't even feel it at all. But as soon as it was touched, her heart seemed to be torn and suddenly hurt fiercely. She felt uncomfortable all over. So inexplicably, it became an instinctive reaction. The place on her shoulder that left a small white cross became her sensitive point and couldn't be touched. It seemed to be a sore spot. At this time, the phone on the coffee table rang. Feng Ling brushed her wet hair with her hand, picked it up casually, glanced at the caller ID, and picked it up. Feng Ling, I accidentally switched to an American sports channel on TV today and saw an American close combat competition. Are you the champion of the women's group? When Liqing's voice came from the phone, Feng Ling paused and didn't explain but asked, how can you be sure that it was me? I'm not completely sure. I just feel that in my limited knowledge, I can only think of you as a girl with such great skills and such clean speed. Moreover, that girl's height is about the same as yours. In addition, that code name is Zero. Although this Zero isn't Ling, based on my understanding of you, I feel that this Zero must be you. Feng Ling smiled lightly. There is always someone better. Maybe it really isn't me. Chapter 10:10. When Liqing smiled. You don't have to explain to me. It doesn't matter whether it's you or not. Anyway, I won't tell others. In the past 2 years, only I know your cell phone number, and only I know how you left. Although you have been unwilling to tell me where you are now, I won't ask much. But Feng Ling, please don't find me annoying. Nanhing has been looking for you crazily for the past 2 years. Hearing this name, the smile in Feng Ling's eyes gradually disappeared. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up first. Feng Ling, when Liqing said helplessly, I'm not a lobbyist. I know how miserable you were when you were kicked out of the base. I saw you lying on the roadside with my own eyes. But in the past 2 years, Nanhing has been in the base, and the elders of the Li family are not allowed to enter the base. He hasn't returned to the Li family for 2 years and refused to see the elders. He has really been looking for you. Although I don't know why he married you, I can see that he is not pretending to love you. He must have some difficulties that are hard to explain. Many times, a person's words are not necessarily honest, but if a person doesn't explain himself, it may not be as bad as others say. Maybe there are other reasons. When Liqing said helplessly, I'm not a lobbyist. I know how miserable you were when you were kicked out of the base. It's not important, Miss Wen. It's been so long. I've long forgotten about it, Feng Ling said lightly. I'm very grateful to you for keeping my secret and not asking me where I am now. I can only say that I'm living a good life now. My life is peaceful, my work is stable, and everything is good. I don't need to worry about anything. I don't want to get involved with those people and things in the past. As time passes, I and that group of people will forget each other. How could you forget? If you really forget, you won't wear a mask in this kind of competition. You wear a mask because you don't want anyone to recognize you and find you. If you don't want to be found, it means that you haven't forgotten at all. Feng Ling didn't speak anymore and just looked at the audience sitting under the stage who had been laughing. but she seemed to feel nothing and couldn't find anything funny. Miss Wen, I am very grateful for your help back then, but I really want to bid farewell to everything in the past. So, don't mention anything about those people, or that person to me anymore. I don't really want to hear it. You should know that if it weren't for the kindness you've shown me, perhaps a cold and heartless person, like me, might have cut off all contact with you. Of course, I'm not overestimating myself. I'm just expressing my position. Wen Liqing sighed. I understand, but Nanhing has been looking for you for the past 2 years. The work in the hospital is so busy. It's rare for me to be free. Rest early. Good night. Feng Ling hung up the phone. Feng Ling casually used the head coach's card to receive the money. In the past few years, she had never used her real name and borrowed other people's bank cards. The head coach was good to her and wouldn't touch her things. Recently, because of the championship prize, he had been urging her to buy a small house and settle down with the money, so that she wouldn't have to rent a house all the time. Feng Ling didn't have any concept of these things. She just wanted to eat well and have a place to live. However, the coaches in the martial arts club all persuaded her like this, so she had to look around. There were no new buildings nearby, and most of them were small apartments suitable for foreign students. She liked a duplex of about 60 square meters near the place where she lived now. Her prize money and the salary she had saved in the past 2 years were just enough for a down payment. It was not a bad idea to buy an apartment that she could decorate to her liking. So she bought it. Because it was not a new building, the original owner of this apartment decorated it in a messy style. She had the whole house demolished and redecorated, so she couldn't live in it for the time being. Considering that she had to live in at least half a year later, she still had to live in the small house she rented. Anyway, she was used to living there, so it didn't matter where she lived. However, although the people around her were happy for her, they all knew her temper and didn't spread it around. Because she wore a mask, and they respected her idea of keeping a low profile, they didn't say it to others except for discussing and envying each other. The days passed peacefully. The only exception was Chun Beiqing, who would ask someone to send a bouquet of flowers before each class. Coach Ling, where should I put the flowers today? Directly into the trash can? Or directly into the cleaning auntie's car? A coach passed by outside and happened to sign for the flowers. Then he came in with the flowers with a smile on his face. Feng Ling was sitting at the desk watching the recent simulation courses in the martial arts club. Hearing the noise, she didn't even lift her eyelids. Whatever. Tisk whatever. By the way, that classmate Chen is really good to you. He knows that you never look him in the eye. But he never gives up. He sends you flowers 3 times a week. And each time he sends you flowers. Today, it's champagne roses flown in from France. It smells so good. Feng Ling still didn't lift her eyelids and continued to watch the simulation courses on the computer. Seeing that she was as cold and indifferent as ever, the coach tooted and threw the bouquet in his hand to the passing cleaning auntie. After class, Chun Beiqing said that today was his friend's birthday and he needed a female companion. Feng Ling directly refused. Chun Beiqing said regretfully, "If you don't go with me today, I will keep following you until you agree." Feng Ling didn't bother to talk to him. She packed up her things and went home. She drove back to the place where she lived and was about to walk in. Suddenly, she stopped and felt that someone seemed to be following her. She turned around but saw no one. Then she looked at the cars around and coldly picked up the phone to call Chun Beiqing. After the call went through, she was about to ask him if he really dared to follow her. In the end, the other party picked up the phone. She heard the noise in the private room, and it didn't sound like he was tailing her. "Where are you?" Feng Ling asked with a frown. Chun Beiqing smiled on the phone. "What? Do you regret not coming out with me? I'm already drunk. I can't drive to pick you up now. How about I send someone to pick you up?" "No, I won't go." Feng Ling abruptly hung up the phone, lowered her eyes and walked in. As she walked, she kept an eye on the movements behind her. Someone was following her. And this person could not be found by her when she was driving. Obviously, he was better than her in all aspects. Who could it be? Dash. Ching Ching will go to Shanghai to participate in the Yuan Super IP Storm Festival in the next few days. There are a lot of activities on the schedule. I may have to write on the plane. I will try to keep updating regularly. Chapter 10-11. Sensing the presence of the person behind her, Feng Ling did not go home directly, but turned into a supermarket nearby. She bought some things in the supermarket and pushed the shopping cart while paying attention to the people behind her and behind the nearby shopping racks from time to time. She strolled back and forth in the supermarket for half an hour. The sky outside was already dark. Feeling that the person didn't seem to be following her, she paid the bill and went out. After walking out of the supermarket, she did not go back immediately. She walked around the parking lot again and looked at all the cars parked there one by one. She had lived here for a year and a half, and she had an impression of every car that was often parked downstairs. Her naturally keen observation skills allowed her to instinctively notice a car that she had never seen before. However, in the past few days, she had not seen any unfamiliar people or cars, including just now. There were no people or strange movements. After returning to the car, she sat quietly for another hour. After confirming that the person seemed to have left, she quietly closed the car door and quickly walked into the building where she lived. When she arrived at the floor where she lived, she looked around again and raised her eyes to the corridor security monitoring equipment in the corner of the corridor that was normally lit. After thinking for a while, she entered the door. This situation of being suspected of being followed lasted for about 3 days. Every time when Feng Ling returned home from outside, she felt that someone seemed to be watching her from behind, but she could not find any car or suspicious person. On the 3rd day, she simply turned around and walked to all the places nearby that could hide a person. Whether it was behind a tree, in a corner between buildings, or in a shadow, or in a coffee shop, dessert shop, or a small restaurant downstairs, all kinds of people were there, but they were all eating and shopping normally. It was different from the stares she felt from the people following her. Since she came to Boston, she had not provoked anyone, and no one knew who she used to be. She had no enemies. If she really did offend someone, it was probably the gang of gangsters who helped Chen Beiqing back then. However, it had been so long. If they had the ability to take revenge, they definitely wouldn't have waited until a year and a half later. A few days ago, the head coach told her to pay attention to her safety. After all, the black tight suit she wore on the fighting field was too sexy. Not only did she make a lot of money, but her figure was also so good. At that time, it was even broadcasted on TV, and many people saw it. Once someone recognized her, it was likely that they would disguise themselves as a lecherous tram and plot against her. Of course, ordinary perverts couldn't beat her. However, the person who was following her was clearly not an ordinary person. To be able to stand outside of all her defenses and cautiousness, and not even a trace of it could be found. Whether it was in martial arts or acuity, he was above her. Inexplicably, a thought suddenly jumped into her mind. Her face suddenly turned cold. She stopped looking and turned to quickly walk back. After returning home, she threw down her bag and walked to the window to look out. It was still quiet downstairs, and there was no hidden car driving away. It was so quiet that it seemed as though she had been overthinking for the past 3 days. Knock knock. Just as Feng Ling took off her coat and was about to prepare some dinner for herself, she suddenly heard someone knocking on the door. Hearing the rhythmic knocking, her hair instantly stood on end. She turned to look at the knocking door and walked over. Through the door, she was not sure who was standing outside. She only looked at the door coldly and thought of all the possibilities. Then she remembered that the other party's martial arts skills were above hers. Apart from that person, she really couldn't think of anyone else who would be bored enough to follow her. She abruptly opened the door and looked out coldly. However, she saw a middle-aged man in work uniform standing outside with a cardboard box in his hand. "Hello, Miss Ling, is this your express delivery?" Feng Ling looked at the box in his hand and then looked at the man in front of her. "When did you come up? I don't remember having anything to express." I have a habit of delivering packages from the upper floors, one floor at a time. There were 2 packages waiting to be delivered upstairs, so I came down directly from the safety escalator. The delivery man smiled politely at her and handed her a pen. Please sign here. Feng Ling was puzzled and reached out to take the box. She saw that the address of the organizer of the close combat competition was written on the sender's side. Only then did she put down her guard, sign for it, and close the door. She opened the box and saw that there was a trophy and commemorative doll sent by the organizer. There was also a set of black combat uniform with the organizer's name printed on it. It was completely made according to her figure. After checking the things in the box, Feng Ling sat on the sofa and looked at the golden trophy. Suddenly she sighed and smiled. It seemed that she was thinking too much. She had been hiding carefully for so long. How could she find her? There were classes all day on weekends. Feng Ling took over 3 classes, not only Chen Beiqing's. The martial arts club was divided into 3 levels of learning courses, junior high and senior high. She taught all 3 levels. These students only had 3 classes a week on average, but all her classes added up to more than 6 hours a day. The busier her work was, the more fulfilling and stable her life was. The head coach and the boss of the martial arts club especially liked her, because she was not afraid of hard work. As long as there was a need, as long as she could do it, she would not refuse. Other coaches always wanted to have a holiday on the weekend to accompany their families and girlfriends. Only Feng Ling had a full schedule every day and never took a day off. Even when she did have a holiday, she would sit in the coach's office and watch those basic martial arts moves. Once she did, she would watch them for a whole day. In the eyes of her colleagues and students, she didn't live like a woman at all. But she was beautiful and didn't even know it. She had a different kind of charm. There was one last class in the afternoon on Sunday. The other coaches had gone home, and only Feng Ling waited for the students in the martial arts club. When the students arrived one after another, she took a look at the time. There were still 10 minutes before the class began, so she continued to sit in the office. After a while, she got up with a cup and was about to pour herself a glass of water. However, as soon as she walked around the desk, she suddenly saw Chen Beiqing coming in with a large bouquet of red roses. Looking at the familiar bouquet of roses, and then at Chen Beiqing, who came with the roses in his arms, Feng Ling glanced at him indifferently and walked past him with the cup in her hand, not even looking at him. Chapter 10-12. Coach Ling, it's Christmas in 2 days. Let's go on a date. Chen Beiqing had long been used to her indifference. Seeing that she just went to the water dispenser by the wall to get water, he turned to look at her and said gently. Feng Ling patiently took the water and said coldly, "No, you can give up. I'm not interested in you." Chen Beiqing raised his eyebrows, put the bouquet of roses on her desk, and turned to walk over. "I've been chasing you for so long. Can't you see that I really like you?" Feng Ling picked up the glass that had been filled, turned around and saw him standing next to her. She frowned. "Excuse me." Chen Beiqing didn't move aside. The young man was over 185 meters tall and looked very tall in front of her, who was about 17 meters tall. It seemed that only when he looked at her condescendingly could he feel that she was actually a little woman, not the cold-faced coach who usually stood in front of him coldly. Seeing that he didn't move aside, Feng Ling immediately looked at him coldly. "If you don't want to go to class, I'll go there later. If you're late for even 1 minute, I'll treat you as a truant. I'll go with you." Feng Ling looked at him speechlessly. "What on earth do you want to do? I like you and want to be your boyfriend." Chen Beiqing was very calm, and then looked at her shoulder. "I'm sorry about the shoulder throw last time. I just wanted to see how it feels to successfully lift you up. I didn't want to hurt you. If I hurt you, I apologize." Feng Ling pursed her lips. "I didn't hurt you. You think too much. You're good at learning. You don't need to apologize to me. Hurry up and get ready for class." When she was about to turn and walk away, Chen Beiqing reached out and held her wrist. "Ling, I'm very curious about you. What kind of experience did a young girl have? How can you be so good at martial arts and have such a calm character? If you don't want to talk about your past, I don't mind, but since you have such a temper, it means that your past is not happy. From now on, I will give you happiness and happiness. Give me a chance, okay? Feng Ling suddenly felt a little funny. These men were all like this. When they liked someone, they would confess and take it. When they didn't like someone anymore, or when they had to leave, they wouldn't give the woman any explanation. Such a thing as affection, isn't it the most untrustworthy? After 2 seconds of silence, she pulled her hand out of his. Go to class. Don't talk nonsense. You're just a 20-year-old girl. Do you really think I'll believe the nonsense you told me back then? You lied about your age. According to the coach's profile, you're only 20 years old now. That is to say, when you helped me last year, you were only 19 years old. What's wrong with my age? Even if I'm 15, I can still beat you to the ground. This is a martial arts club, not a blind date. What right do you have to judge others? Here, let martial arts do the talking. Chen Beiqing smiled. Sometimes I really feel sorry for you when you are clearly unhappy, but still want to pretend to be mature. Feng Ling. She suddenly turned around and put the cup on the desk. She didn't drink the water and didn't bother to look at the flowers on the table. She tied her clothes and waist belt, turned to walk out of the office, and was about to go to the classroom. Chen Beiqing was silent for a while. Standing at the door, he suddenly reached out to stop her. When Feng Ling turned to look at him in surprise, he put his long arm around her and was about to pull her into his arms again. But Feng Ling quickly raised her leg and kicked hard against his thigh. When Chen Beiqing's face changed and he lowered his head to glare at her, she easily pushed him forward, avoided his hug, and walked out of the door. A master. She couldn't beat him. She couldn't even launch a gentle attack. After she left, Chen Beiqing rubbed his hand on his thigh and hissed. He looked back at the back of the woman who walked into the classroom. He helplessly raised his hand to touch his clean short hair and walked back into the classroom in frustration. When they entered the classroom, a group of male students saw that she and Chen Beiqing came in one after the other. They immediately whistled and asked, Coach Ling, tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and the day after tomorrow is Christmas Day. What are you going to do? Do you have a date? Feng Ling was expressionless. I have classes tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. Oh, what classes? Even if there are classes, I guess the students will ask for leave tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. I think you might as well take a break for 2 days. If you don't have any activities these 2 days, we'll treat you to dinner. Class. Feng Ling looked at them coldly. As soon as the group of male students received her gaze, they didn't dare to say a word and hurriedly got ready, but their eyes still glanced at her from time to time, and then at Chen Beiqing, who was expressionless. She wondered if Chen Beiqing had succeeded in pursuing her. It was almost Christmas, but he couldn't even ask her for a date. TSK. The so-called Christmas was an exciting festival for these international students. According to them, it was even more exciting than the New Year in China. It was a festival for young people, but Feng Ling, who was younger than them, couldn't feel any festive atmosphere at all. She had never celebrated any festival. 2 days later, on Christmas Day, all the students indeed asked for leave today. After refusing the invitation of several coaches to have dinner together, she drove back to her residence alone. In the past few days, it seemed that no one was following him, so he was more relaxed on the way back. There were many men and women wearing thick clothes walking side by side on the roadside. Occasionally, he would pass by a huge Christmas tree, and he could often see couples from all over the world hugging and kissing under it. The whole street was full of red Santa Claus going out at night. Just like this, she watched the neon scenery and the crowd along the way until she drove back to her apartment. There were all kinds of colorful lights and a beautiful Christmas tree downstairs. After getting out of the car, Feng Ling looked at the Christmas tree over there. It seemed that every time there was such a lively festival, she could feel that she didn't fit in with this world. Walking towards the Christmas tree with all kinds of colorful lights hanging on it, she looked up at the big star at the top of the tree. Next to her, A little girl wearing a snow-white dress ran past with a big red apple-shaped light in her hand. As she ran, she turned around and told her parents her wish for this year in English. It seemed that they were all very happy. It seemed that no matter if it was lovers, friends, family, colleagues, or classmates, they would all have all kinds of people to accompany them. Feng Ling raised her hand and touched the snow hanging on the Christmas tree. It was cold to the bone. Just as she was about to turn, she suddenly saw a figure from the corner of her eye. Chapter 10:13. She even thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. In this world of ice and snow, the white fog drifting out of her mouth obscured half of her vision. Feng Ling narrowed her eyes and carefully looked in that direction, but saw nothing. Her eyes darkened, and she turned to look at her surroundings again. Still there was nothing. There shouldn't be anything. She turned to leave the Christmas tree, bought a bowl of instant noodles at the convenience store downstairs, and then returned to her residence. The elevator reached the 15th floor. The moment she stepped out, she sharply raised her eyes to look at the man standing in front of her residence. The man was dressed in black casual sportswear. His hands were in his trouser pockets, and he leaned against the door leisurely. When he heard the elevator door open, he raised his eyes to look at her. His gaze shifted from her startled and cold gaze to the instant noodles in her hands. "You only bought one for me?" The man raised his cold brows slightly. His words sounded as though they hadn't seen each other for 2 years, but had just been separated for 2 days. Feng Ling resisted the urge to crush the instant noodles in her hands. She looked at him expressionlessly and hesitated, wondering if she should return to the elevator and leave immediately before the elevator left. However, before she could make up her mind, the man had already taken his hands out of his trouser pockets. He casually stretched his arms to the sides and held them against the elevator doors. He looked down at Feng Ling, who had unconsciously taken a step back. "Do you want to go downstairs and talk in the cold wind of -10 degrees? Or do you want to stand here and talk?" Feng Ling coldly looked at him. She knew that her heart was calm enough. Back then she was very calm, let alone now. However, Li Nanheng's sudden appearance was indeed unexpected to her. So a few days ago he had already come to Boston. In the past few days, when she felt someone behind her, it was him. She did not speak. She glanced at the number on the elevator door and said heavily, "Move." Li Nanheng looked at the expressionless little woman and watched her deeply. As she wished, his hand moved away from the elevator door. Feng Ling directly walked out through the gap in front of the door. She placed the instant noodles in her hands on the shelf in front of the door, but had no intention of opening the door to enter. "What are you doing here?" She faced the door with her back to the man behind her. There was no warmth in her voice. "She's been missing for 2 years. I've been searching for her for 2 years. It's as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Suddenly one day, she appeared in all the major magazines as the National Women's Close Combat Champion. Tell me, why am I here?" The man's voice was right behind her. His tone was calm, as if everything that had happened in the past 2 years had passed. As long as he found her now, everything would be fine. Feng Ling had a million pills of regret in her heart, but it was useless. When she participated in the competition, she was just looking for something to do, because her life was too monotonous and boring. She had no idea that she would appear on TV and appear in magazines. She didn't expect that even though she was wearing a mask, people familiar with her could still recognize her. Even when Leching could recognize her, let alone Li Nanheng. But she never thought that one day she would see him again. Feng Ling turned around and looked at the man behind her, who was much taller than her. "Mr. Li, the reason why I left was not because I wanted to escape, but because I was forced to leave by several people in charge of the Li family. I lost all my face and was forced to leave. So the so-called missing for 2 years and being searched for by someone for 2 years shouldn't exist. I have no reason to be searched for, and you have no reason to look for me. Now there's no need for me to be here." Looking at the young and inexperienced short-haired girl in the past, she had transformed into a petite woman with short hair over her ears in 2 years. However, Her emotions and her expression were cold and unfamiliar. She didn't allow anyone to get close to her. Li Nanheng looked at her coldly and stepped forward. At the moment when Feng Ling took a step back defensively, he lowered his eyes and looked into her cold eyes. What did you call me just now? Not boss, not Li Nanheng. Mr. Li? Feng Ling's voice was calm. I'm no longer a member of 11 Base. What should I call you? As she spoke, she suddenly felt that she didn't seem to have done anything wrong, and there was no need to escape. She raised her eyes and looked into his cold eyes. Mr. Li, I've heard others say that it's common for men and women to fall in love, and it's also common for them to suddenly break up for no reason. Feelings come and go quickly, so I won't pursue any of the past with you. And please don't pester me because of that. Let's part on good terms. This is what I should have said 2 years ago. But unfortunately, your grandfathers didn't give me a chance to say these words and asked me to leave. Part on good terms? Li Nanheng's eyes instantly sharpened. He lowered his head and approached her again. Feng Ling didn't expect him to suddenly lower his head. She took another step back and leaned against the door behind her. The man pressed down on her. Just as she was about to move away, he raised his hand and held her shoulders, pressing her firmly against the door. Feng Ling, I've King searched for you for 2 years. Now you're telling me to part ways on good terms? Did I say I wanted to break up? Did I say feelings come and go quickly? When did I say I didn't want you? Hen. Feng Ling thought she had heard wrong. For so many years, she had always thought that Li Nanheng was rational. At least, his 3 views should be normal. How could a married man say that he didn't want to break up with another woman? How could he say that he still wanted another woman? Even if she was very ignorant when it came to matters of the heart, she still knew what it meant to be a person. But she found that in the past 2 years, the things she had gained and the things she had lost in her heart had made her more stable. Especially regarding Li Nanheng's matter, she didn't want to pursue what was right or wrong, nor did she want to argue with him. Thus, she only looked at the man who pressed her against the door. She looked at the anger and pity hidden in his eyes for 2 years. She only looked at him calmly. Oh, it's very simple. That is, I don't want you anymore. I don't want you anymore. Li Nanheng endured for 2 whole years. Even though he knew that she was too strong and stubborn, and there were too many things that she couldn't easily accept, he finally found her. Seeing that her life was too peaceful, he couldn't bear to disturb her. But in the end, because she was alone under the Christmas tree, he wanted to hug her too much. But because he couldn't restrain himself for a moment, he finally waited for the knife that stabbed his heart 2 years later to return. The man's gaze was dark and heavy as he watched her. Without waiting for him to speak, Feng Ling said coldly, "Let go." Chapter 10:14. The man did not retreat, nor did he let go. He merely lowered his eyes to look at her. I've been walking alone for 2 years. Now that I've finally found you, do you think I'll let go so easily? What else can I do? Mr. Li, do you think I'll go back and be a shameless third party? Who knows I'm a third party? Feng Ling looked at him calmly. I'm very calm. It's been so long, and I don't have any complaints or blame you. I won't pester you. What's there for you to pester me? Li Nanheng's grip on her shoulder tightened. Do you remember I told you to wait for me for 3 years? As if she had heard a joke, Feng Ling's expressionless face suddenly broke into a mocking sneer. She raised her hand and pushed his arm away. She took out the key to open the door and said indifferently with her back to him, I don't remember anything I shouldn't remember. Please go back. Feng Ling, give me a chance to explain. Some things can't be helped. It's also my responsibility. The door was opened. Feng Ling turned back to look at him. I know that many things can't be explained with just a few words. If you could explain, you would have explained it to me 2 years ago before you got married. There's no need to say anything now. I've already let it go. There's nothing to say. With that, she went straight into the room. The door suddenly met with some resistance. She turned to look at the man's hand on the door. She glanced at it coldly, put down his hand, and turned to look at him. Do you want to come in? You used to be like this too. You said that if you want to break into my world, You must break in. No matter how many defenses I set up, they were broken by you again and again. In the end, you got what you wanted and left. Now, it seems that I can't stop you if you want to come in. What do you want?" The short-haired girl in front of him no longer had the attitude of a young girl. Instead, she seemed to be in between a young girl and a woman. Her eyes were even colder than when she was in 11 base. In that coldness, there was a lot of experience and firmness that he had never experienced, and even a lot of calmness that he didn't want to see. Anger and haggling were the signs of deep love. Deep fear, hatred and resentment were also signs of love. But there was nothing in her eyes. It was so faint that not even a trace of his existence could be found. Li Nanheng slowly put down his hand, looked at her for a long time, and said hoarsely, "Rest early." Feng Ling did not reply. She slammed the door with a pung and locked it from the inside, completely blocking the man's line of sight. Usually, this room was very quiet, but tonight, it seemed to be very lively outside. Because of this, her room was even quieter. It was unusually quiet. Feng Ling stood at the door and didn't even look at the closed door behind her. The next morning, the post-holiday atmosphere continued. When the curtains were drawn, one could see the world of ice and snow outside. There were also many couples who had woken up early, wearing thick clothes and jogging outside. The lights on the Christmas tree from last night had been turned off, but the colorful decorations on it still shone with all kinds of dazzling colors in the morning light. Feng Ling didn't have much to do in the morning. Most of her classes were after 10 in the morning or 1 in the afternoon. She fried an egg for herself and baked 2 pieces of bread. She casually smeared some blueberry-flavored jam, put a piece of vegetable leaf and a slice of ham on it, and cut it into pieces to eat as a sandwich. After eating, she put on her coat and prepared to go out for a run. Although she had already left the base and did not need to train every day, her living habits had long been formed. The exercises she taught the students in class every day were not enough. She still needed to run 2 or 3 kilometers every morning to feel comfortable. She had just opened the door and was about to step out when out of the corner of her eye, she suddenly saw the figure standing in front of the window by the corridor. She raised her eyes and saw Li Nanheng standing there. The man's back was against the morning light outside the window. She was startled, looked down at the time on her wrist, and then looked at the man. Hearing the door open, Li Nanheng turned to look at her. "Did you sleep well?" She saw that the man was still wearing the same clothes from last night, and smelled some smoke. She turned to see that there were a few more cigarette butts on the smoking box by the elevator. "You were here last night?" She turned back to look at him. At this moment, the man's back was facing the morning light outside the window. He looked at her and did not admit or deny it. He only said, "At least I didn't disturb your rest last night." Feng Ling looked at him speechlessly, her eyes still cold. "So you released secondhand smoke at my door?" Li Nanheng's cold brows moved. He raised his eyes to look at the air conditioner and the passage that released the smoke. "I saw the word smoking area written on the side of the safety stairs. Besides, your door is very good. The secondhand smoke shouldn't affect you." Feng Ling really admired Li Nanheng's shameless behavior. She held the door handle. "Why are you waiting at my door? I have to go to work. I don't have time to deal with you. Didn't I let you go last night? Did I say I was leaving?" Feng Ling frowned. "So I don't want to talk to you. I've said everything I should say last night. I'll say it again. I've already let it go. I don't want to mention anything about the past. I have to go to work now." The man put one hand in his trouser pocket. He first lowered his head and smiled. Then he raised his eyebrows and turned to look at her. "I don't want to talk to you now. You go to work. I won't disturb you. Then you can leave." "I'll go where?" "Go back to the hotel, back to Los Angeles, back to the car, or back to where everything belongs to you. Go wherever you want. It has nothing to do with me. Who told you I lived in a hotel? I drove here. I've been in the car for the past few days. I haven't eaten or slept well. After seeing you, I was cut into pieces by your mouth again. I'm in a very bad mood right now." The man looked at her and said matter-of-factly, "I stood outside your door all night last night. You should go to work. I'll go in and sleep. Fengling, you went into my house to sleep? Is there a problem? Fengling wondered if this man really didn't know what it meant to be shameless. I don't seem to have a reason to take you in. Last night, you were afraid that I would go in and do something to you, so I didn't go in to disturb you. Now you're going out. Let me go in and sleep for a while. No. No. Fengling refused very decisively. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.